one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, September 7th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, 17 degrees. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. With inflation still near a 40-year high, the Bank of Canada is going to make another move today to cool the economy. They're trying to bring prices back under control, so that means a rise in the borrowing costs. Here's our senior business editor, Mike Eppel.
This will be the fifth interest rate hike this year, expected to be a 0.75 percentage point increase, bringing the overnight lending rate up to 3.25%. After cutting rates aggressively to record lows during the pandemic, the central bank has been on a reverse course since March, raising interest rates aggressively as inflation hovers around 7.5%. Today's rate hike will be only slightly less than the 100 basis point increase at the last meeting in July. The Bank of Canada is part of a global effort by central banks to raise borrowing costs to cool the global economy and try to figure out how to balance out the supply chain and consumer supply and demand. At the City News Business Center, I'm Mike Eppel.
City News Time 9:01. Now your forecast. Here is meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Plenty of sunshine and warmer air for us for the rest of this week. The high 25 degrees will feel like 30 today. Tonight clear and 12, and tomorrow plenty of sunshine. 28 degrees will feel like 32. For today, the high 25.
Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, it's 17 degrees. The third debate among those running for Ottawa mayor on the environment is going to be held this evening. Orleans United Church on Orleans Boulevard is the site for this debate. It features 9 of the 14 people who are declared candidates to be Ottawa's next mayor. The event is scheduled to start at 6 o'clock. It will run for a couple of hours. A manhunt for the remaining suspect in the Saskatchewan mass killing continues today after a tense police search came up empty yesterday. Miles Sanderson wanted on first-degree murder charges after RCMP say the stabbing rampage on Sunday left 10 people dead, another 18 wounded, and 2 of them critically. Families searched but did not find Sanderson yesterday after a reported sighting on the James Smith Cree First Nation. His brother, Damien, who has also been a suspect in the killings, was found dead on Monday. Federal cabinet ministers are in Vancouver. It's a 3-day retreat as they prepare for the fall sitting of Parliament, a new Conservative leader, and the ongoing pressure of COVID-19 recovery and inflation. The Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs, Dominic LeBlanc, says their discussions will focus on the economy, including housing affordability as well as inflation.
We have been working on these affordability issues for many years. We understand the anxiety of Canadians, and that is the focus of our work here in Vancouver. We're not here to spend a lot of time worrying about who the Conservative Party will choose as their next leader.
Now, voting to choose the next federal Conservative leader did close at 5 o'clock yesterday afternoon. The announcement, though, is not coming until Saturday. City News Time 9:03. The Chio Dream of a Lifetime home lottery tickets are now on sale. This year's home is in Canada. Top prize includes the home, the furnishings, gas, vehicle, cleaning, and more. The value of that first prize is just around $3.5 million. Also, early bird and assorted other prizes, plus the 50-50. That gave one person $1.4 million in cash last year. The home is located in Canada at 620 Winterset Road. Several ticket packages available. Go to chiodreamofalifetime.ca. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Good, bad, or complicated.
There's no news in Ottawa and the Valley he won't talk about.
It's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Yes, it is Wednesday already. The week is flying by. Busy, busy, busy in the news game today. Welcome to the Rob Snow Show on City News. Coming up, we're going to follow up on a story I came across yesterday. I saw it in the Globe and Mail. Headlined, nearly 1 million Canadians projected to have dementia by 2030, new report says. 1 million Canadians by the year 2030. That would be an increase of 65% in less than a decade. According to new projections from the Alzheimer Society of Canada. And by the year 2050, it will be 1.7 million Canadians. And I read the story and I couldn't help but think, my gosh, look at the healthcare system now. Look at the long-term care system now. Look at what passes for home care now. And all the stories of the burnout being experienced by spouses and children trying to take care of family and loved ones suffering with dementia. What's it going to be like by 2030? Or 2050? Just given the shape that we are in now, which I think we can all agree, not the best of shape when it comes to health care, long-term care. 65% increase by the year 2030. I mean, how many healthcare workers are we going to need? How many more long-term care beds? Heck, forget long-term care beds. I mean, long-term care homes. Entire homes. As of the end of 2020, according to this report, there were almost 600,000 Canadians with some form of dementia. Almost 350 new cases diagnosed every single day. It also says 350,000 Canadians are considered unpaid caregivers. Think spouses, children, neighbors, providing an average of 26 hours of care every week. Every week, unpaid. It sounds like a healthcare avalanche. And my fear is we're totally ill-equipped to deal with it, and people are going to get buried. We're going to dig into this report, coming right up with an expert from the Alzheimer Society of Canada. And from there, I'm going to jump right into politics, score our political fix. Holy cow, there's a lot going on. Lots of rumors. Lots of speculation. That's what makes politics fun. Rumors and speculation. And you know what? It's not even so much about the Conservatives and the grand finale of the leadership race on Sunday, although we will most certainly talk about that. The Liberals. Lots of rumors, lots of speculation. That's what makes politics fun. What comes next for the Liberals? You have Paul Wells, who I think is simply the best political writer of his generation. He is speculating in his Substack newsletter that this idea that Chrystia Freeland might be a shoo-in to be the next Liberal Party leader, post-Trudeau, whenever that happens to be, might not be all it's cracked up to be. That she's not one to be out shaking hands and kissing babies and trying to woo delegates or members in the far-flung Legion halls of nowhere, Canada. And that the groundwork may already be in the process of being laid for her to take leave from federal politics with one gig in the rumor mill. Secretary General of NATO. Wowza. That's a pretty juicy rumor, isn't it? Yeah. Liberals are whispering things in people's ears. We'll explore that in more detail when we're joined by our political strategist right after the 9:30 news. I mean, if Freeland headed for the exit, could you really blame her? Given what we saw on that video from Grand Prairie, the City Hall in Grand Prairie, Alberta, could you really blame her? I mean, who needs it? If that happened to me, that's what I'd be thinking. I don't need this. Why do I need this? I don't need this in my life. There are a million other things I could do. Like, why would anyone want to make it a career having to put up with that? That's part of the reason why it's so damaging. It chases successful people away. If you had a successful career, why would you want to jump into politics and make yourself the subject of such abuse. It never ends. It follows you wherever you go. Can you imagine the Prime Minister's inbox? The stuff he must get? I'm not his biggest fan, but my gosh, I hate to think what they're saying to him. And it doesn't just happen at the federal level. I mean, it happens at all levels of government, right? There's reporting this morning from the public broadcaster about the abuse some city councilors have had to endure, especially during the Freedom Convoy. I mean, protesters showing up outside councilors' homes. And the end result is that good people who have a lot to contribute say, yeah, hard pass. Hard pass. I don't need the grief. Some candidates in the Quebec provincial election campaign are wearing bulletproof vests. Pretty sad. Also on the political front, how things are expected to go down on Saturday with the end of the Conservative Party's leadership race. Will it be a coronation for Pierre Poilievre? I thought to myself yesterday, I think I said this on the radio yesterday. Can you imagine if Poilievre doesn't win? There aren't enough crows in the entire city of Ottawa for the political media to dine on if Poilievre doesn't win this thing on Saturday. And while that leadership race is winding down, the Liberals have all gathered on the West Coast. They're all huddled together, and they're plotting some kind of plan for the economy and the cost of living, inflation, probably because Pierre Poilievre is eating their lunch on the cost of living, or is it breakfast with the Prime Minister? But what are the Liberals planning? There are rumors, and we love rumors and speculation. It's what makes politics fun. Rumors that they're working on some kind of inflation relief package, like pumping money directly into the bank accounts of Canadians. Or maybe it could be some kind of tax credit. You know, they have this agreement with the NDP. And wasn't it the NDP leader who was calling for the government to send every Canadian $1,000? Every Canadian should get $1,000. Even Toby Lutke and Terry Matthews. Every Canadian should get $1,000. Why not make it $1 million? You know, some think that's how we got into this trouble with inflation in the first place. Too much cheap money floating around. But it's post-Labor Day, and that's always a hot time in politics. The House of Commons slated to return less than 2 weeks from now. On inflation, on the cost of living, speaking of, in less than an hour, it's the Bank of Canada's turn to opine. Most of the economists agree the Bank of Canada is going to hike interest rates again this morning. It's a question of by how much, 75 basis points, 100 basis points again. That is a 10 o'clock announcement. So what are we, 46 minutes away here? No news conference today. That will happen tomorrow. There will be a statement issued by the Bank of Canada today. The economists, you can bet they'll be poring over that word by word, trying to figure out what it all means for interest rates for at least the rest of this year. Is the Bank of Canada going to say, okay, that's it, we're done. We're going to see how effective this has been at driving down inflation. Will the Bank of Canada hit the pause button, survey the landscape before it makes its next move? Remember back in July, the Bank of Canada raised its overnight rate by 100 basis points. Bam! Putting the overnight rate at 2.5%. I was looking at mortgagebrokersottawa.com this morning. Right there on the front page says our rate, 5-year fixed mortgage, 5.29%. 5-year variable, 4.30. The posted 5-year fixed at the Royal Bank is this morning 5.54%. The yield on a 10-year Government of Canada bond is 3.194%, up 50 basis points in the last month. 1 year ago today, the same 10-year Government of Canada bond had an interest rate of 1.2%, from 1.2 to to basically 3.2 in a year because life comes at you fast. So we'll get the view on rates this morning, interest rates, inflation outlook, what it means if you're in the market for a mortgage. And we'll do the Talkback Hour. Between 10 and 11 o'clock, we do the Talkback Hour, pick an issue, boot it around. And today, part 2 of how can we make Ottawa more livable. We did transit and transportation yesterday, talked a lot about OC Transpo, free transit, the state of the roads, all that stuff. Our focus for today, housing. Housing. Only fitting on Bank of Canada Day that we're talking about housing, really. We have big problems in the city with housing. Shortage of housing. And what housing we do have, for many, it's just unaffordable. Whether that's people looking to buy a home or people looking to rent an apartment. And the wait time to get into social housing, like Ottawa community housing, I'm told it's as long as it's ever been. I've said this before, I'll say it again. I moved to Ottawa more than 30 years ago. The newspapers were filled with stories about how long the wait time was to get a unit in social housing. It was 5 years. And the news stories would say 10,000 names on the wait list. Here we are, 32 years later. The wait time, 5 years, sometimes longer, and there are 13,000 names on the wait list. The repair backlog for social housing, I've heard that's as bad as ever. I remember there was a time Ottawa community housing was in such a state of disrepair. It was so bad that the mayor of the time, his name was Bob Shirelli. You know what he did? He fired the whole board of Ottawa community housing, called it a disgrace, and he fired the whole board. Replaced them all with an interim board. I wonder what Bob Shirelli would see today if he were to take a tour. According to the latest numbers from the Ottawa Real Estate Board, sales of houses are slowing down because of interest rate hikes, but there hasn't been much of a decline in prices. Prices were up. Sales were down 27%, but prices for houses in Ottawa up. 707,000. David bought 3 of them just last month. 707,000. Putting that Bitcoin fortune to work. Average sale price for a home in Ottawa, $707,000, up 5% over last year. $421,000 for a condo, up 3.7% year over year. I looked it up in August of 2016. The Ottawa Real Estate Board's website only goes as far back as 2016. So what is that? 6 years ago. 6 years ago. Most houses 6 years ago in Ottawa were selling for less than $400,000. And condos were going on average for $260,000. And you could get a mobile home for less than $60,000. 9 mobile homes sold in Ottawa last month for an average selling price of $196,000, up 225% in 6 years, almost as good as Shopify stock. We have candidates decrying sprawl and then screaming foul when plans for high-rise towers are announced for the downtown core. Something's got to give when it comes to housing, trying to make sure everyone has a roof over their head. How do we make Ottawa more livable? After the 10 o'clock news, join the discussion. It's the Talkback Hour on The Rob Snow Show on City News.
Are you for or against us? We are trying to get somewhere. Looking around for a helping hand. We're doing our best to keep it steady, stop it falling down around us. Armed around each other's shoulders, we go everywhere. Are you in? Are you out? Are you in? Are you out? Are you in? Are you out? Do you care to dance? dance about and shout. John Jack and the boys being a band on a one-night stand. We'll be dancing in the floodlight. Second to none, not even on a bad night. We'll be dancing in the floodlight. Second to none, not even on a bad night. We'll succeed where others failed and stay together many years and watch us take the world by storm. Are you in? Are you out? Do you care to dance about and shout? Don Jack and the boys being a band on a one-night stand. We'll be dancing in the floodlight. Second to none, not even on a bad night. We'll be dancing in the floodlight. Second to none, not even on a bad night. Are you for or against us? We are trying to get somewhere. Looking around for a helping hand. We're doing our best to keep it steady. Stop it falling down around us. Arms around each other's shoulders, we go everywhere. Are you in? Are you out? Are you in? Are you out? Are you in? Are you out? Do you care to dance about and shout? John Jack and the boys being a band on a one-night stand.
Opinions.
Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Nearly 1 million people in Canada are expected to have dementia by the year 2030. That would be an increase of 65% compared to 2020. According to projections from a new report from the Alzheimer Society of Canada. And joining us to talk more about it, Dr. Joshua Armstrong, research scientist, Alzheimer's Society of Canada. Good morning.
Good morning.
It's a dramatic increase, 65% in less than a decade, really. Why? Why such an increase?
Primarily due to the aging of the population. Baby boomers are getting older and older, and with that comes a higher risk of dementia.
What is dementia? How would you describe dementia or define dementia?
Dementia is a umbrella term for a group of different conditions that have an impact on the cognition or the thinking of people, as which is often associated with aging.
Okay, so can you expand on that a little bit? There are various forms of dementia, as I understand it, right?
There are different types. There's Alzheimer's dementia, which is probably referred to as the most common. Vascular dementia, when you have problems with blood vessels in the brain causing cells to be damaged and lead to those cognitive problems. There's also a dementia called frontotemporal dementia or Lewy body dementia. Another thing that is important to understand too is that we often try to put things into categories, but often as people get older, people actually have more than one challenge to their brain, which leads to what we call mixed dementia or mixed pathologies. So they might be having vascular problems and those characteristics from Alzheimer's disease, which leads to their cognitive impairment.
Okay. What kind of care, typically speaking, do patients with dementia require?
All sorts of different care types, right? So it really depends on the individual and the care that they need, the kind of impairments they have. Often they might need assistance with day-to-day living, assistance with things like bathing and dressing as their dementia progresses. They will need help with support generally on day-to-day things, or getting to different therapy programs, or bringing in home care services to support them in their homes. They also need support with their changes in mood, personality, and behavior that occur with dementia. And just all sorts of other types of dementia. And as dementia is a progressive disease, so as the dementia progresses, their care needs will change.
Become more complex, more intense, I guess, Doctor.
Exactly, yeah. So you might just, a person with dementia might just have some memory impairments earlier on and still can be functioning quite independently, but as the dementia gets worse, they'll need more and more support. And one of the challenges is some people that the dementia gets worse at a quicker rate, or sometimes takes over a decade. So it's not an easy thing to manage because we don't know how fast the decline will occur.
Okay. So we see, there are news headlines all the time about the strain right now in acute care hospitals and the shortcomings of the long-term care system and the inadequacies of home care. So what sort of investments would be needed, say, over the next decade in order to take care of 1 million patients with dementia?
Well, obviously, there's going to be a growing need for care, and then so that means a need for more human resources and also training just to better understand dementia and how to interact and support someone living with dementia. Also, most people living with dementia prefer to live in their homes and do live in their homes until their dementia becomes quite advanced, where they require more like around-the-clock care. So when they're living in their homes, they rely on their family, friends, and neighbors for care and support. So as we have an increasing number of people living with dementia, we're going to have an increasing number of care partners who will also require supports of their own in order to deal with the challenges of providing care.
Yeah, because this study indicates unpaid caregivers are providing about 26 hours of care each week, which can take a terrible toll on the caregiver. Stress and burnout.
It will certainly impact the stress and burnout of the care partner themselves. It also depends on that care partner's resources and their own health at the time. Sometimes it's adult children taking care of their parents, but also it could be an older spouse who might be dealing with their own health challenges. So if you add on that additional 26 hours, or depending on the level of care required per week, that's going to obviously have an impact on that care partner.
I know one of the focuses for researchers in terms of, say, therapeutics has been to try and develop drugs that can, say, stave off or push off, delay the worst effects of dementia until much later in life. Are we making any progress on those kinds of therapies? Are there any breakthroughs on the horizon?
I don't see any breakthroughs on the horizon, but there is a lot of better understanding of other non-pharmaceutical approaches, so risk reduction approaches that, when effective, can push off the onset of dementia in individuals.
Okay.
Some studies are just simply looking at educational differences. Having more education might actually delay the onset of dementia by up to 5 years from one study that I can recall.
Okay. Risk reduction. Yeah, that was going to be my next question. How can people best prevent becoming a dementia patient later in life? I've been told in the past by researchers, as with any illness, try to lead a healthy lifestyle.
That's great advice for sure. The same would go for dementia. Mm-hmm. There's been a lot of research into risk factors for dementia, and they tend to be broken up into two categories: non-modifiable and modifiable. The non-modifiable ones are the ones you can't change, so that'd be something like sex at birth, your genetics, your age. You can't really change those. But there's a growing list of what we call modifiable risk factors, where you can make changes related to your overall health to try to address dementia.
Okay. Dr. Armstrong, thank you for your insight this morning.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's Dr. Joshua Armstrong, research scientist, Alzheimer's Society of Canada. This is the Rob Snow Show, your political fix after the news on City News.
News in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, September 7th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, 18 degrees, and here's what's making news this hour. If you have a variable loan or mortgage, you will likely see an interest rate increase. For those shopping for a mortgage, that rate is also going up. Bank of Canada announcing the updated policy in about a half an hour from now. And those who believe the rate will go up at least 75 basis points, that's 0.75%. It would give Canadians the highest rate in the G7 if that prediction is true. One member of the federal cabinet says ministers attending a 3-day retreat in Vancouver are focused on the economy. Dominic LeBlanc says Liberals are not concerned with who will be chosen as the next Conservative Party leader federally. Voting did close for that yesterday afternoon at 5. The announcement is coming on Saturday. An annual report looking into the harms facing Canadian children found unintentional injuries pose the biggest risk, followed by poor mental health and systemic discrimination. The study from the organization Children First Canada says preventable and accidental injuries are the leading cause of death among those 14 and under. Children First Canada says Indigenous children are 12 times more likely to be taken from their homes and placed in foster care. City News Time, 9:33. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's time to score your political fix. With much to discuss, we are joined from Crestview Strategy by consultant Bryan Detchou. Welcome back, Bryan. Good to hear from you again.
Thank you. Good morning.
And Josie Sabatino from Summa Strategies, consultant at Summa Strategies. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
Yeah, it's great to hear from everybody. Rumors and speculation, they make politics fun. And according to Paul Wells' Substack, there are reports being expressed in Liberal land that Chrystia Freeland is not really all that interested in becoming the next leader of the Liberal Party. Quote from Paul Wells. I really like Paul Wells. Quote, the Liberals I spoke to are skeptical that Chrystia Freeland would run to replace Trudeau. I just don't see her sitting through a bunch of debates with other Liberals, one of my Trudeau confidants said of Freeland, or meeting delegates in a succession of small towns. And an exit route, plausible but far from sure, presents itself. She is being mentioned as a serious candidate to become NATO's next Secretary General. Bryan, what do you think of such rumors appearing in the political news media in this country?
You know, this is not the first time we hear or I hear such rumors. And the funny thing is, the jobs she's allegedly interested in always appear to be at the head of international organizations. When you look at Chrystia Freeland's career before politics and her time in politics, especially since the Liberals have formed government and she's become Minister of Everything. I think it's pretty clear what she's passionate about. I think it's clear the aspects of politics she's interested in. I think she adored renegotiating NAFTA. I think she was and continues to be very passionate about Canada's involvement in the war in Ukraine, but I'm not sure how much she enjoys campaigning, debating with caucus, engaging with stakeholders, fundraising. So it wouldn't... Getting
yelled at in Grand Prairie, Alberta.
Exactly. That's another aspect to it as well. So it wouldn't necessarily shock me if she wasn't interested in the job, if she's seen the job description and is only interested with 20% of what the job would entail. I would add, the piece says leader of the Liberal Party. Another thing that I would add is I think that the equation is different if she were to run to become Prime Minister. And if that the role of the leader of the Liberal Party is as part of the opposition. I don't think she would have any interest in being in the opposition.
In other words, Mr. Trudeau resigns and isn't defeated in an election, but resigns, and the Liberal leader automatically becomes the Prime Minister.
Correct.
Yeah. Big difference there. Okay, interesting. Josie, why are we seeing a story like this in the political news media here in Ottawa?
I think we're talking about rumors, and one of the rumors that's circulating right now is that the Prime Minister isn't getting ready to step down. So the job that Chrystia Freeland might be seeking in terms of a Prime Minister might not actually be there. And, I understand kind of putting this forward and saying, I don't want this job. It's a hard job to have, and this government is tired. They're 8 years in. The staff aren't fired up. People aren't motivated about the Liberal parties, and you're seeing this in their donation numbers as well. So I think it's a really challenging position to want to take hold of, and you're going to need a vision that's really going to be going up against somebody like Pierre Poilievre. So the deck is kind of stacked against her. So I really think, her team is trying to get out. They're trying to get some spin out there in terms of her international opportunities. So I think, this tends to happen, and good on them for trying to get ahead of this.
Okay. All right. I know this is inside baseball. Okay, but it's been all over political Twitter that an individual by the name of Tyler Meredith, they talk about the inner circle. You have to be in the inner circle, right? This is the inner circle. Like, he's part of the inner circle. Top advisor to both Chrystia Freeland and Prime Minister Trudeau. He is going to leave the inner circle of power in this country at the end of this month. What do you make of that departure? Just par for the course at this stage of the game, or do the two things have something in common? Bryan.
I would say both things don't have anything to do with each other. Okay. For those in the game, we're all well aware of who Tyler Meredith is, and he's definitely very much an insider. He's worked with Freeland, Morneau before that, and is now in PMO. But these individuals are humans as well. I think we saw in his farewell tweet, he's been there for 7 years, 6 budgets, 5 economic statements, and 2 election platforms. And I know the last 2-3 years especially must have been very hard for this man. I'm not sure if he even slept, considering all the files that he was juggling, from everything to do with COVID and, an election during that time, and now everything to do with inflation. Yeah. It's been a very difficult few years, and, the job is not an easy one. So I can't blame anyone after such a long time who might want to try something different and explore different.
Still a young guy, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Maybe he just wants to sleep.
Maybe. Yeah. Josie, these two things, they make me curious. Do they have anything in common? What do you think? What do they have in common? Poilievre has them on the run. Look, all the Liberals are on the run already. They're making other plans. What do you think, Josie?
I was a staffer in the Harper government from 2013 to 2015, and it was a really great time to be in a junior role because people were just leaving in droves. And, I think this is probably a natural exit point for somebody like Tyler Meredith, who's in a senior staff role. And I certainly don't think it will be waiting until 2025 for an election. So it's really about shoring up the staff who want to stay, the staff who are going to keep that inner circle motivated. and really put forward an agenda that's going to compete with Poilievre. And I don't think anybody's under the illusion that it's going to be an easy fall for the Liberals. You know, they're dealing with inflation. We've got another Bank of Canada rate hike today.
Yep.
So I think, you know, it's just time for the people who aren't going to stick around for another election to go.
Okay. Very interesting that those two things are out there today. All right, let's switch gears. Talk about the Conservatives. That's enough about the Liberals. Let's talk about the Conservatives. T-minus, 3 days. New leader of the Conservative Party to be revealed on Saturday. Obviously, the front runner's Poilievre, right? Pierre Poilievre. Everybody's saying that. I want to start with you, Josie. If Poilievre wins, why did he win? What made his campaign the most successful campaign, the winning campaign?
You know, I think Poilievre understands that people vote with their emotions, and he's doing the same thing that Justin Trudeau did heading into the 2015 election, and that's successfully playing into, you know, the hopes, fears, and aspirations that people have, rightly or wrongly. He's done this with his freedom message, that take back control of your life and, you know, get government spending under control. So he's really identified the issues that are wreaking havoc on people's lives. He understands and he's listening, and I think, you know, that is really the contrast between him and the Liberals right now, is that you have the Liberals saying, well, you know, this might be your fault and you need to adjust your behavior based on this, whereas Poilievre is saying, you know, I understand this is where government can be adjusted and this is how we will help get your life back into control. So I think that's the advantage he's had on his opponents in the CBC race, and I think, you know, that's where he will really be successful heading into the fall session.
Okay. Bryan? If Poilievre wins, everybody expects he's going to win. What made his campaign the winning campaign?
You know, there's a lot of discontent, frustrations, fatigue. It's been a long 2-3 years for many people, and I think Pierre Poilievre and his campaign have successfully tapped into that. There's frustrations around housing, soaring costs of living, other changes to the economy. Many people feel left behind, and many people want explanations. And Pierre Poilievre and his campaign have provided answers, and they've proposed solutions in a clear and effective way, in a way that, you know, I would argue no conservative leader has been able to do before. He's also managed to carve a path for himself as a compelling communicator on Twitter and many different social media platforms, which has been effective in reaching a base of voters that conservatives have not typically been able to reach, and that is, Gen Z and younger millennials. Mm-hmm. So I think he's been effective in that way, and that will prove to be the success of his campaign. I mean, if we just speak about on the Twitter front, Pierre Poilievre has been on Twitter and all these platforms, growing his follower base for years, whereas his closest competitor, Jean Charest, created a Twitter account the day he announced that he was running.
We all remember that. We all remember that video. Yes,
the nice little hostage video.
The hostage video. Yeah.
So that's some of the contrast between not only him and his opponents, but he's had he's been doing this for years, and there is a thing about being...
He elevated it, though. I think he elevated it during the campaign, though.
Of course. And sometimes, it's just about being the right person at the right time. And I think he's been able to embody many things that people have looked for in the last couple of years.
Okay, so if the Charest campaign is unsuccessful, and we don't have to, go over how he was kind of late to the social media game and really never mastered it the way, say, Poilievre did, but so few have the way Poilievre has. What may have been some of the shortcomings, assuming that Charest can't pull this off and really doesn't have a path to victory, Josie? What was wrong with the Charest campaign? Josie?
I think
Any ideas?
The big problem with Charest is, to Bryan's point, right time, right place. Pierre has been working at this for years, and he's had the advantage of sitting in the front benches for the Conservatives. He has studied his opponents. He's studied his opponents within the Conservative Party itself, not just his Liberals, but within the party itself. So I think, I don't think there is much that he could have done to really harness this race for himself. I think Pierre has had the membership stacked for a while, and the conclusion will be how big Pierre wins and whether that is on the first ballot. And I think, Josh Ray will have to look at that for sure.
Okay, we'll be right back. Talk a little bit more about Pierre Poilievre and what the polls are saying. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
You've been busy. You've now written your 10th book. Let's talk about the latest book and the idea behind it, Amanda.
Thanks. So it's called Chair Exercises for Fall Prevention. I've written 6 exercise guides now, 4 of them specifically designed for seniors and adults who maybe want to work on their balance and fall prevention. All of the exercises in this book are done sitting in a chair so that you can work your balance, your posture, strength, and flexibility without having to stand up and move around.
Yeah, and fall's very important in that demographic that you specifically work with, Amanda. Let's talk about falls and injury prevention and why it's so incredibly important.
So falls are the leading cause of injury for older adults, and 20 to 30% of them have 1 or more falls every year. We know that they cause 85% of seniors injury-related hospitalizations. So, the challenge is once you've fallen once, you're more likely to fall again. And one of the reasons is that in addition to injuring yourself and maybe losing some muscle strength when you're injured and recovering, it also impacts people's confidence about getting up and moving around. Certain health conditions that we're to as we get older, like arthritis, stroke, multiple sclerosis, or Parkinson's, impact our balance too. So we need to, keep moving, keep using our muscles, keep building strength, but in a safe way so that, we can make sure enjoying our golden years.
Well, and a good example is the work that you do with your parents. Each and every week you go through exercises with your parents, and you were telling me off screen that, your dad was actually on the show with us quite a few years ago. And now he's doing those chair exercises, and you've received feedback, or he has in particular from his doctor, said, that's just as important as doing some of those other mobility exercises, right?
Absolutely. And, sometimes his back is bothering him, or some joints might be impacting how comfortable he is standing for a long period of time. So, he said he prefers for most of the time when we're doing the exercises over video to do chair exercises. So I had created, a chair exercise workout that I'm doing with my parents every week. And it's helping tremendously. So that's where I got the idea to do this book. I thought, there aren't a lot of chair exercise books out there. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of great chair yoga books, but not everybody wants to do yoga. So I wanted to just focus specifically on strength exercises that you can do while seated.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News 101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
We are back, part 2 of your political fix. Bryan Detchou is here, consultant at Crestview Strategy. Josie Sabatino is with Summa Strategies. The polls say, Ipsos says, quote, I'm going to quote here. While Pierre Poilievre continues to be the hands-down favorite among Tory voters, among the general population of Canadians, perceptions are less flattering. Fewer than 1 in 4 Canadians have a positive impression of Poilievre, outweighed by the 1 in 3 who have an unfavorable perception. Moreover, in both Ontario and Quebec, public opinion is solidly against him. Compounding these challenges, Liberal and NTP voters are united in their dislike, suggesting limited opportunity to recruit new voters to the Conservative ranks. So that's Ipsos. Now, the leadership campaign for Poilievre, one of their narratives have been, look at us, we're recruiting younger voters, people who have never even considered the Conservatives before. We are wooing new Canadians to our cause. This would seem to perhaps suggest otherwise. Bryan, how do you view the growth opportunities for a Poilievre-led Conservative Party?
Well, first, on the point around young voters, I would just say that, and I am one of them, we're not very reliable. We're not always reliable, and if you want proof of that, just ask Jagmeet Singh. Okay. I think if we were basing ourselves on his TikTok account, I think he would be prime minister. But that is not the case. So getting young people to donate and attend your events is one thing. Getting them to the polls is another challenge that all parties face, not just conservatives, but even liberals and the NDP. Now, in terms of Pierre Poilievre's ability to grow his base, leadership elections and general elections are two completely different games. During leadership elections, you're mostly speaking to the partisans of your party, and during a general election, you're speaking to, everyone, all Canadians. Now, if Pierre Poilievre is not going to move back towards the center, as many former conservative leaders have done in the past, there will be challenges for him to, I think, grow his base. I'm not sure. Some of these elections are a fight for the moderate voter, and I'm not sure, his fight for the freedom or his fight against gatekeepers will resonate to many moderate voters. And to that point again around the polls, the Ipsos poll, during elections, people normally vote for someone or against someone, or for something and against something. So I think that the Conservatives think that there are a lot of people that are going to be voting for Pierre Poilievre or against Justin Trudeau, but I think they can't underestimate the number of people that will be going to the polls to vote against Pierre Poilievre.
Okay. Very interesting analysis there. Josie, on growth opportunities for a Poilievre-led Conservative Party, how do you view them?
I think we've got to be very careful looking at the negatives, because if those determine the actual outcome of a general election, Jagmeet Singh would have been our prime minister twice over. He consistently polls high on the positives, and the Liberals and the Conservatives have been fighting over this negative ground for a while. But I think, the most relevant piece of that Ipsos poll was that 42% of Canadians don't even know who Poilievre is or have any impressions at this point. So I think that's where
That's remarkable to me that they don't know who he is. 42% don't really know who he is at this point.
Right? Because we talk about it, and in our circles, we all know this. It's our day-to-day life. But if he can grab some of that unformed opinion, turn that into a vote, and then combine that with the conservative movement, you've got a real path to victory there. So I think that's where his growth opportunity is. And the one other point I would push back on is, when we're talking about young people, those are the people that got Justin Trudeau elected in 2015. And when they're motivated, they do go and vote. And I think, if this is a change election like it's looking like it will be, those people will come out and vote. And I think Pierre really has an opportunity to pull them to his side as well. Okay, interesting.
Bryan, when you were last with us, we did talk about the Quebec provincial election campaign. Let me just kind of throw this at you. This Ipsos poll says in both Ontario and Quebec, public opinion solidly against him. Why would Poilievre be a turnoff to Quebecers?
I think Quebec or Conservatives have always had an interesting relationship with Quebec that dates for many, many years. I think kind of like what I was saying last week on the show, the Quebec conception of conservatism is not the same as the Anglophone Canadian conception of conservatism. So I think that there is a lot of elements of his campaign and his personality that may not resonate that much with Quebec voters. So I think that's one of the big challenges that he will face. It's not unsurmountable. I think that if we just look at the relationship that Quebec had with Prime Minister Stephen Harper, when he first got elected and near the end, we saw a lot of growth for his party in that province. So I think Quebecers they'll give you a chance, but their first impression might not be a great one.
Yeah. Okay. I thought they might have a breakthrough in the last election after Legault endorsed the Conservatives, but really there was no breakthrough even when that happened. So that's very interesting. Okay. Let's talk about this in the final few minutes that we have. We had a couple of minutes left here. This Liberal cabinet retreat happening on the West Coast. 3 days of meetings in Vancouver yesterday. The rising cost of living, the state of the economy reported to be topping the agenda. And here we are, we're just 5 minutes away from another announcement from the Bank of Canada on interest rates. I mean, there have been lots of rumors that the government is eyeing some sort of inflation aid package. If that is the case, Josie, what would that look like, do you think?
Well, I'm hoping it won't look like throwing a check in the mail at a time, when our government can't afford this. What it should look like is cuts to government spending. And, if they want to put forward a plan, it should be broad-based tax cuts. But this is really, these solutions that the government comes up with are really symptomatic of how they view economic policy, and it's always just to spend more money and throw a check at people and hope that the problem goes away. And I just simply don't think it'll work with the inflationary crisis we're dealing with today and cost of living where it is.
Yeah. I mean, there is a case to be made they shouldn't do anything, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it will just make the inflationary pressure worse. I mean, the reason that the Bank of Canada feels the need to raise interest rates is there's too much demand in the economy already. It's trying to dampen demand. So if you're giving people money, you're not really doing the Bank of Canada any favors. But nevertheless, this may not be about economics, it's about politics. So, Bryan, lots of rumors. Maybe some sort of aid package. What would it look like? What do you think it could look like? I mean, the NDP leader was saying, give everybody $1,000.
Yeah, I don't think the Liberals will throw money at this problem. To date, unlike many global leaders, Trudeau and his government haven't taken new measures recently to ease the burden of record high inflation. I would say that's for three reasons. One is the criticism that they face for overspending during the pandemic. The second is possibly, wanting fiscal room to tackle future challenges like climate change. And the third is kind of like we were saying, there is the fear that printing or distributing more money to ease the pains of inflation will only cause more inflation. Nonetheless, Trudeau is in a position where he might have to do something because not doing anything, holding that position might be increasingly untenable because many Canadians continue to suffer. But also, once Pierre Poilievre becomes the leader of the Conservative Party, how many times do we think he's going to say just inflation once the House resumes? Just in that first...
Many.
Yeah,
until you're tired of hearing it.
There's increased political pressure as well. The political pressure will be immense. So I think we'll see the Liberals do something, but I think they'll go towards the side of a more prudent approach. So I think we should expect something, but we should probably scale down our expectations.
Okay. A very satisfying political fix today. Thanks to the two of you. We'll speak soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Yeah, Bryan Detchou, consultant Crestview. Josie Sabatino, consultant at Summa Strategies. When we come back, the Talkback Hour on The Rob Snow Show on City News.
Being a crossing guard works great as part of my schedule as a high school student because I still have time to do my tests and assignments while earning a little bit of cash on the side.
Working as a crossing guard fits into my current lifestyle because it gives me a lot of time during the day to pursue hobbies that I'm very interested in.
A friend of mine introduced me to this job. I didn't know it was actually a paid job.
I always start my day. It's a very little, I guess, few months baby, and she always comes with her dad on a pram, and the smile she has, like, oh my God.
Well, I think the OSC is a very good employer. They show quite clearly that they care about you. They're very polite.
They really make you feel like you're part of a family.
It's fun. I really enjoy it.
Gets us out of the house, too.
Yeah.
1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, September 7th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, 18 degrees, and here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. State of healthcare, the subject of an Angus Reid survey of both American and Canadians. Here's City News reporter Laura Carney.
Angus Reid polled Canadians and Americans and found people in this country are having a considerably more difficult time accessing health care. This comes amid a summer of healthcare challenges, from emergency room closures to doctor shortages right across the country. Over the last 6 months, 2 in 5 Canadians, about 12.8 million adults, say they either had a difficult time accessing or were totally unable to access one of 5 key health services, including emergency care and surgery. When asked how confident they were that they could access urgent care in a timely fashion, 61% of Canadians say they are not, compared to only a quarter of Americans. Breaking it down by province, access issues appear worse in British Columbia and Atlantic Canada. Here in Ontario, just over a quarter of respondents report chronic difficulty. Laura Carney, City News.
City News time, 10:02, and now your forecast. Here's meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Plenty of sunshine and warmer air for us for the rest of this week. The high 25 degrees will feel like 30 today. Tonight, clear and 12, and tomorrow, plenty of sunshine. 28 degrees will feel like 32. For today, the high 25.
And right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, it's 18 degrees. Miles Sanderson is still on the loose 3 days after a stabbing rampage in Saskatchewan that left 10 dead and 18 injured, including 2 critically. Police are asking the public to remain vigilant. A reported sighting of him yesterday brought drones and tactical vehicles and a chopper to the James Smith Cree Nation, but the search efforts came up empty. Sanderson's brother Damien, who has also been a suspect in the killings, was found dead on Monday. Couple of missing people in Ottawa. 14-year-old Simon Deogei was last seen around supper time in Orleans. Simon is 5'8", thin, with short black hair. Last seen, he was wearing a gray T-shirt, black sweats, a blue hoodie, and black Jordan running shoes. Simon could be around the Hetherington area. Police are also continuing the search, the one we told you about yesterday, for 30-year-old Elaine Naira, last seen on August 13th around the area of Conroy and Johnson. We have pictures of both and full descriptions on our website, ottawa.citynews.ca. Well, breaking news from the Bank of Canada this morning, raising its key interest rate an additional 75 basis points, now at 3.25%. The bank says short-term inflation expectation does remain high. Given the outlook for inflation, the Governing Council still judges the policy interest rate will need to rise even further. And British Prime Minister Liz Truss has ruled out a windfall tax on oil companies in order to pay for her plans to tackle the energy crisis there.
Liz Truss plans to cap skyrocketing energy bills here, but to pay for that, she isn't going after the oil companies. Opposition Labour Party leader Keir Starmer.
Nothing new about this Tory Prime Minister who nodded through every single decision that got us into this mess and now says how terrible it is.
Her plan, Starmer says, boils down to a taxpayer buy now, pay later deal.
When asked who pays, says it's you, the working people of Britain.
Truss's Conservatives currently trail the Labour Party by 7 points. Tom Rivers, ABC News, London.
And I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
It's time to talk back
on the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
When it comes to housing policy, what can be done to make Ottawa more livable? 750-1310, 750-1310. 613-750-1310. Let's talk about housing here in the city of Ottawa in this municipal election year. All this week, we're gathering ideas on how to make Ottawa a more livable city. Yesterday, we talked about how everyone gets around this city. Public transit, transportation issues. Whether that's vehicles or bicycles or piggybacks. You had a lot to say about all of it. And I really enjoyed the conversation, and I'm hoping we can have the same kind of conversation for today's issue, and that's housing. Gets a lot of media attention, housing, and it'll be all over the news media for the rest of the day, probably on the front page of some of the newspapers tomorrow. This Bank of Canada interest rate hike, and the statement is just out, and it says interest rates are going to keep going up. We're not done yet. When you think about housing, how do we make Ottawa more livable? Does anyone have any ideas? If so, I'd love to hear them. 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. We have a shortage of housing. We have a shortage of quality housing. We have a shortage of affordable housing. We have a housing crisis. Problem number one would seem to be that we just don't have enough houses of all types. At 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. I mean, there have been lots of reports about the housing supply shortage. Lots of research has been done on this topic by people, way smarter than me. For example, the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, lots of smart people working there. You would think if anyone would know about the Canadian housing market, it would be the fine people at the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation. And at that government organization, in a recent report, it said Canada needs 3.5 million more affordable housing units by the year 2030. Everything's by the year 2030. A lot of bad things are going to happen in 2030 if we don't get our act together. And the year 2030, I mean, you'd hear that in the news. It used to sound like it was far off. It's not really that far off anymore. It's like, 8 years from now. Canada Mortgage and Housing also said that housing supply needs to be, quote, rethought and done differently. That there needs to be, quote, a drastic transformation. In other words, it just can't be business as usual anymore. We need to build a lot more homes, and we need to build them faster. On the affordability issue, CMHC says that almost 10 years ago, a household on an average income in Canada would have to devote close to 40% of its disposable income to buy an average house in Ontario. So if everything about you is average, you have an average income and you want to buy an average house, about a decade ago, 40% of your disposable income went to housing. As of the end of 2021, 60%. Doesn't leave a lot of money left over. 60% of disposable income. Okay? Just to buy the home. Let alone all the costs to stay in the home once you buy it. So it's not like it's anyone's imagination. Housing affordability is getting worse. And one of the big issues, making houses less affordable, and this has been identified by CMHC, is the length of time that it takes for a property developer to get approval from the authorities, to get the go-ahead. Yes, you can put shovels in the ground. Yes, get the crane. Let's start building stuff. Quote, right from CMHC, there are significant barriers to achieving this quantity of supply by 2030, this 3.5 million affordable housing units, including significant delays when a project is proposed and when it starts, due to long approval processes. Long approval processes. And you know what Pierre Poilievre would scream? Gatekeepers. Long approval processes, translation, gatekeepers. All the red tape, all the studies, all the fees, all of it, driving up the cost of building homes for people in here in our city. Your local council, believe you me, it excels at making houses more expensive to build. It gets grade A on that. It just did that recently with this whole cash in lieu of parkland thing. And it will do so again in fairly short order with more development charges. And who pays for all of that? Well, all of that is eventually downloaded onto the home buyer, already struggling to afford the home in the first place, 60% of their disposable income. You know, we were told Neil Malholter was on my show yesterday. Okay, Claridge, big developer in town, right? On a $500,000 condo, we were told yesterday by one of Ottawa's leading property developers, there are $35,000 worth of municipal fees in there on a $500,000 condo. Just fees paid to the city of all sorts. Not taxes, just fees. And the prediction from that developer was that $35,000 was going to go up by another $50,000 in just the next little while, topping out at about $85,000. Who's going to pay that? Well, the person shopping for the $500,000 condo. For the young buyer, the first-time buyer, the $500,000 condo, not going to be a $500,000 condo anymore. It's going to be closer to $600,000. And your city council makes these decisions and then moans about the lack of affordable housing units, as though it has not played any kind of role in making things worse and not better. So 750-1310, 750-1310. I'm just getting warmed up, and I could talk for the entire hour about this, but I'd much rather hear from you, and it would be much better if we heard from you. You're paying the property taxes. Maybe you're finding the cost of homes unaffordable. Maybe you're worried that Ottawa's only going to become a city of the affluent, or a city of have and have-nots, those that have houses and those who don't. It's a big issue. 613-750-1310. When it comes to housing, what can be done to make Ottawa more livable? Chris in Canada. Chris, thank you for calling. Chris, you're on the air.
Good morning, Rob.
Yeah, hi, Chris.
To echo on some of your sentiments, I think the big developers in the city should dig their heels in and say, we're not putting one more shovel in the ground until the city pulls their heads out of you-know-where and gets rid of some of these fees. Because, I mean, the ramifications, if, say, Mattamy Homes decides we're not building until this is fixed, you have the trickle-down effect of all contractors not working and everything, you know, the electricians, et cetera, et cetera. And suddenly...
Think of the economic impact of the home building industry in Ottawa. Everything that revolves around real estate in Ottawa and property development in Ottawa. How important that is to the local economy, Chris.
Yeah, and the builders aren't shy on how much they are paying in fees and taxes and weight and everything else.
Yeah.
Well, the more houses that people can afford to move into, the more municipal taxes the government's going to get anyways. So they should just dig their heels in and say, you know what, we're not doing anything until you guys fix this.
Yeah, and it's not just the fees, it's the time, right? It's making that proposal to the planning department at the city hall and then sitting on that development for 3, 4, or 5 years. And, you know, we've seen how much in just a year the whole inflationary environment can change, right? So...
And Ottawa and Toronto were two big immigration hubs. Where are these people going to go?
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. Great call. Thank you. We're talking about housing today and trying to make the city more livable. You have any ideas when it comes to housing policy and what can be done to make Ottawa more livable? If so, I'd love to hear from you. I'm open to hearing just about any idea you may have. 750-1310. Rob Snow Show, City News.
Riding requires attention and focus. No distractions, no moment of unawareness, because one brief moment can cost a lifetime of other moments. Everyone deserves to arrive home.
The
Maritime provinces are home to some of the oldest settlements in Canadian history. But did you know that one of the first was actually started by black settlers? Take a minute to learn about the rise and untimely fall of Africville. Black people have lived in Nova Scotia since before the founding of Halifax in 1749, but it wasn't until after the American Revolution in the late 1700s and early 1800s that large groups of black settlers began to arrive in the province, many of whom were former slaves promised freedom and land in Nova Scotia. What they encountered when they arrived, however, was racist treatment by their white neighbors and government officials. This pushed many black people to build homes on the outskirts of town instead. But despite the area receiving little support from government officials and lacking necessities like functioning sewage systems, access to clean water, and proper garbage disposals, the tight-knit community persevered, and so Africville was born. For more than 150 years, the small community grew, expanding from just a few homes to a population of over 400 people. Everything changed, however, in 1964 when plans for a new bridge and the idea of urban renewal prompted the municipality to set its sights on Africville's land. Instead of investing in the community, officials approved a relocation program that promised free job training and employment assistance to help residents through relocation. But the reality wasn't so kind. Residents had their belongings moved in city dump trucks and homes were demolished immediately after their owners left. Of the 400-plus people living in Africville, only 14 residents held clear legal titles to their land, so the rest were only given $500 with the promise of more social aid in the future. Not much else was actually done to support Africville and its residents until 2001, when a United Nations report called for reparations to be paid to the community. In 2010, Halifax Mayor Peter Kelly apologized for the atrocities against Africville as part of a $4.5 million compensation deal. In 2021, Councillor Lindell Smith put forward a 7-part motion to plan for the future of Africville alongside local organizations and the descendants of former residents. Today, there's a public park and museum where Africville once stood to teach visitors about the history of the land and its community. If you've never heard of Africville, you're not alone. The tragic story of this small black community in Nova Scotia is not as well known as it should be.
Find your frequency.
Back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
So when it comes to housing policy, you know, this is an election year. Lots of people have lots of ideas. What can we do with our housing policy to make Ottawa more livable? 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. Canada Mortgage and Housing says we need 3.5 million affordable housing units by the year 2030 all across this country. It's not the only organization that's been warning about the housing shortage. Scotiabank, in a recent report, noted Canada has the lowest number of housing units per 1,000 residents in the G7. And it added that the number of housing units per 1,000 residents has been falling since 2016. And that an extra 100,000 units would have been needed since 2016 just to keep up the ratio of housing units to the population stable, just to keep that stable. So we're well below our peer countries, our G7 peer countries on a per capita basis, if you will. So how many housing units do we need to build across the country? According to Scotiabank, it's about 1.8 million. Housing units, housing of all kinds. And they don't put a tagline on it like by the year 2030. That's just to narrow the gap between where we are and where the average is for the G7. My point being, just about everyone agrees we need more houses. Supply and demand are out of whack. We have a lot of people who need housing, and we don't have enough supply. We need more housing units. And, when you have a lack of anything, it drives up the price of whatever the thing happens to be. We have a lack of housing units, driving up the prices for the houses that we do have in stock. It's so easy. Even I can figure it out. But what's the solution? I'm not that smart. What can make Ottawa more livable? With housing. Build more houses. Sounds easy enough. Okay. now that we've identified the problem, it gets trickier when you try to go about it, I guess. As we are seeing play out in real time here in the city of Ottawa, what happens? Well, you get NIMBYism, not in my backyard. You get banana, build absolutely nothing anywhere near anyone. You have city council. You have the provincial government. Municipalities are creatures of the provinces. Okay. You have the municipalities that push back against any new rules from the provincial government, like instant backlash. You have the demonization of property developers by left-wingers. In this city especially, it's out there every day on social media. Oh, city council is in the back pocket of developers. The developers run the city. They get to do whatever they want. They're greedy capitalist pigs, all this nonsense, right? Yeah, until you need a new wing on a hospital, I guess, then your first call is to the property developer. And when you consider how long it takes for a housing project to get approved in this city, it's amazing to me that any property developer even tries anymore. Like years and years and years and years. Okay. Trying to make Ottawa a more livable city. Do you have any ideas when it comes to our housing policy, how we can do that so people can afford to have a roof over their head, no matter their income? 750-1310, 750-1310. Mark in Ottawa. You're on City News. Mark.
Yes. So
yeah, hi, Mark.
What the government does have is crown land. We've got a lot of crown land.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of wood in that crown land.
Yeah.
It's like if they were to parcel some of that off,
right,
give people like a break on it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Maybe.
Yeah. Great. You're spreading the people out, giving them their little parcel of land in the woods. They can commute from home with their Starlink communication system.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
You
maybe,
know,
I suppose.
This is coming, but the government will never parcel out their crown land.
Crown land. Okay.
So,
yeah. I don't know how much crown land is available to be, say, parceled out into building lots in the Ottawa area.
I used to work with a guy who was talking about the land patents and all this, and he had a great idea regarding all this.
Yeah, I don't know too much about the
Well, you know who the guy is, the land patent.
I know. There's a whole kind of movement about that, but I'm saying I don't know too much about it.
Parcel out crown land. Come on. Why don't we try that? Who wants an acre?
Okay, it's not the dumbest idea I've heard so far, but I haven't heard too many ideas so far. It's kind of quiet. I'm surprised. So we've just solved this problem. Everybody's cool paying $700,000 for a house, and mortgage rates going up 75 basis points every time the Bank of Canada has a meeting. What do you think this is doing to people? How do you make Ottawa more livable? Through housing policy. For example, okay, what do you think of tall buildings? I know it's kind of a weird question, I know, but it's a weird city sometimes. We have all kinds of people who say, urban sprawl, it's the worst, it's the pits. We have to stop the sprawl. The suburbs are getting too far out. You have to drive to get everywhere. Driving is bad, and if you're a driver, you're a bad person. Your big house in the suburbs with your front yard and your backyard, how dare you? It's all bad, bad, bad. Bad for the environment. But then a developer comes along, okay, with a plan to build, say, a tall building in the downtown core. And then the same people who spoke on Monday about sprawl being so bad are protesting on Tuesday about the height of a building in downtown Ottawa. You can't win for losing. So what do you think? I mean, we've seen a few very tall buildings go up across the city over the last few years. Are you okay with this kind of development? In fact, the previous city council identified where some of those tall buildings should go. They should go between, if you picture it, Bronson to the east, Carling to the south, over to Preston in the west. Go north until you can't go north anymore. That would be kind of like a condo corridor. We would put all kinds of tall buildings there. And that's where you have the Icon building is there, right? You have the Icon at the right at the corner of Preston and Carling. Are you okay with towers that are that tall? I mean, the Icon, big building. Like, look up, look way up. I don't know if I could live in a building that tall, to be quite frank with you. Some people think a building like that is too big, that it's out of step with what's in that neighborhood. But it's also not far from the O train. It's what we call transit-oriented development. You know, there was a time we had height restrictions in place for part of the downtown core. There was a time when nothing could be taller than the Peace Tower. We've blown past, those height restrictions now. But aren't we, if we're going to be a grown-up city, like a modern world-class city, then don't we have to get used to taller, maybe even much taller buildings in our downtown core? Rethink our skyline? I'm talking 40-story towers, maybe even taller than that. Intensification, densification, I guess, and even to some extent, gentrification. Don't we need to get on with it? Leo in Ottawa. Morning, Leo.
Good morning, Rob.
Hi, Leo. You're on City News.
Hi,
how can we make Ottawa more livable with housing?
Well, we know that the Bank of Canada is continuing to raise interest rates, and we don't know how long this is going to go on. I don't even think the Bank of Canada knows how long it's going to go on to raise these interest rates.
Right.
So by raising these interest rates, let's say they have to raise interest rates for the next year and a half, it's going to cause a real housing crisis.
It'll cost a lot. It'll cause a lot of pain.
Crisis,
yep.
A housing crisis, when then you could have a collapse like they did in the United States in 2008.
Right.
Which drove the prices down drastically. People were walking away because they couldn't afford to pay.
Yeah, they were so underwater.
There was great deals on the markets for the snowbirds going down there. I mean, down to places like Arizona, they were buying these beautiful properties for really good money,
True enough. Yep.
I don't know, but I mean, that's the solution by the raise of the interest rates. I don't know. I'm not.
So you think the market will sort it out, perhaps? The market will sort it out?
The market? It's like a reset button, pressing a reset button.
Hitting the reset button, yeah. I suppose at what cost, though, if people are, going into the bank manager with the house keys and saying, here, you own it now. So, see you later.
Yeah.
Right?
All right.
Yeah. Okay, Leo, thank you. Okay, halftime, talkback hour. Let's see if we can get some more interest in the second half here at 750-1310. On housing, give me some ideas about how we're not doing something right with housing here on the Rob Snow Show on City News.
1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
Today is a very exciting day. We are officially opening the Interzip Rogers for the summer season of this year. Last year we were expecting to have maybe 20,000 people, and we actually had over 30,000 riders for the first year. So we're really excited to reopen this year.
That was epic and scary!
You have a really different perspective view-wise of the area we're in. So you have a clear view of the Parliament. Obviously you're crossing the river, and of course you're moving from a province to another, which is unique of this zip line. It doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. Rogers has been partners even before Interzip opened, actually. They were all in the first meeting we had with Rogers, and that for us was really a nice commitment. We're really fortunate to have Rogers with us, And on top of having Rogers, it's basically the name of the zipline, which is the Interzip Rogers, that is now pretty much renowned across the country.
Rogers Interzip is a great activity for people who live in or visit the National Capital Region. Get out and have an opportunity to zip across the Ottawa River between Ottawa and Outaouais.
In Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, September 7th. Good morning. I am Damilola Unime. Right now in Ottawa, it is 19. In Smiths Falls, it is 20 degrees. And here's what's making news this hour. The Bank of Canada has raised its key interest rate by 0.75 of a percentage point. The rate hike brings the bank's key rate to 3.25%. The bank says Canada's year-over-year inflation rate was 7.6% in July, easing from 8.1% in June as gas prices fell. However, the bank says its core measures of inflation, which tends to be less volatile, continues to move up, and short-term inflation expectations remain high. Now, given that outlook, the central bank says rates will need to rise further to bring inflation down to its 2% target. Ottawa's mayoral candidates will debate their plans for the environment at a third debate to be held this evening. The debate will be held at the Orleans United Church on Orleans Boulevard. Now, 9 of the 14 candidates running for the mayoral seat will be in attendance, and the debate starts at 6 and is scheduled to run for 2 hours. City News time is 10:32. I am Damilola Unime. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
It's time to talk back
On the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Housing policy and livability in Ottawa. How do we make Ottawa a more livable city? Through housing policy. Yeah, I couldn't believe the fuss that was raised about this old 6-unit apartment building on Nepean Street. I mean, to me, this highlights everything that's wrong. You know, we had the 6-apartment building on Nepean Street, housing a grand total. I heard 4 tenants were in there, in that 6-plex. And of course, they didn't want to move. They had apartments for $1,200 a month on Nepean Street, right downtown. Who's moving if you got to $1,200 a month? Way below the market rent. I wouldn't want to move either. But you have to consider the bigger picture and the rest of the story, namely housing shortage, housing crisis. Developer owns the land, is going to tear down the building, offers the tenants new units in a new building nearby, guaranteed same rent for the next 5 years. You're paying $1,200 now. You're going to pay $1,200 in a brand new building for the next 5 years. Moving expenses up to $15,000, if anything, overly generous, I would say. And yes, it's going to be a small downtown parking lot, but a brand new apartment building with 300 new apartments. 300 new apartments. And all the progressives, or so-called progressives, mislead the public and say the city voted to demolish an apartment building to build a parking lot. And they don't bother telling the rest of the story. The rest of the story being the 300 new housing units, rentals, which are badly needed in a city with a vacancy rate of, it's about 3%, right? 97% of the rentals in Ottawa are spoken for. It's wild, some of the things going on in this housing market. Save the building that houses 4 people and cancel a planned development with 300 rental units? And you call yourself a progressive? Blair in Nepean. Blair. Hi, Blair.
Hey, how's it going?
It goes, sir. It goes. How do we make this city more livable with housing? It's getting increasingly unaffordable for many, many people.
Yeah, and listening to one of your speakers yesterday, he was mentioning that the fees for developers went up yet again. This time specifically, they went up near transit stations. I think he said they went up from 10% to 25% for cash into the parkland.
That's right. Yeah.
So, if we're pumping, billions of dollars into the LRT, and we're trying to be a transit-oriented city.
Yes.
I don't see why we're making it more expensive for developers where we critically need development.
Great point.
If anything, they should be offering a discount for those areas to incentivize developers to really put a push on, more units. If we build 10,000 doors or units across the city for that development, further intensification, less of a load on other roads and stuff like that. It's just I've a little while ago I did my first lot severance to try to build a small single family home.
Okay.
My thought was there's any new build in Ottawa is $2 million, so I'm going to build a smaller, more reasonable one. It'll be let's say I was trying to shoot for like $800,000.
Right.
And kind of got a little shocked when I started to see these special requests and all the development fees, cash in the parkland. It was just under $100,000 just in kind of application fees and things that were required to get just the building approved. So
I am not surprised to hear that. $100,000.
Yeah, it's unsurprising because this was my first swing at it, and it's kind of a shock. If I had to go through and pay the same fees to do a smaller, more reasonable house that is desperately needed, or some, big multi-million-dollar house, and it's my same kind of upfront cost, it would be dumb of me not to do the bigger, house that I can have realistically better profit on. So, the city needs to be reducing fees, and everyone wants to say, affordable housing, this, that, and the other thing. Realistically, it's not possible because the fees are so high. The only reality is we're going to build a bunch of new units, and with those additional units, maybe we're going to have some people move up into those newer, nicer units, when then we'll have some vacancies in the more affordable buildings. But you can't, with the fees where they are, I don't see how it's possible to even build an affordable unit, in 2022.
Wow. All right, Blair. Thank you. Real eye-opener there. Yeah. Thank you. Because, I don't think $800,000 is outrageous anymore. I mean, the average sale price for last month, according to the Ottawa Real Estate Board, was $707,000. Average, right? Average. 750-1310. Michael in Ottawa, you're on City News. Michael.
Good morning.
Yeah, hi, Michael.
I'm a lifetime South End Ottawa resident.
Okay.
And I think it's time to examine the Green Belt.
The Green
Belt. That is a Stalinist-era idea imported by Greber.
Yeah.
And we're stuck with
I don't know if it's Stalinist. What makes you say it's Stalinist?
Well, it is. I think that idea came from Russia.
Okay, I don't know if it came from Russia, but it kind of is a silly idea now that you think about it, that Ottawa will never grow beyond, I think the forecast is 300,000 people, and this green belt will keep everybody, keep growth in check. And what happened? The growth just leapfrogs over the green belt, right?
It jumped to the other side.
Jumped right over to the other side. Yeah.
And now we're stuck. We got a transit way that runs through the south end of Ottawa with nothing but NCC Greenbelt land on both sides, and there isn't even discussion of building an apartment along that route.
Right. And can you imagine the uproar if you did, though, Michael? Can you imagine the uproar?
Well, it's a time to have the uproar discussion.
Time to have the uproar. Okay. All right.
There's no space left, and all that NCC land is mostly rock anyway. It's not suitable for agriculture. Look along between Moody and Eagleton.
Yes.
On both sides of the 417.
Yes.
It's nothing but rock. You look along.
Yeah.
Well, again, running through the south end along the new transit route, there isn't a house along it. Nothing but cow pasture in the olden days.
Okay.
Ends up in the south end of Ottawa, again, running through NCC, open fields. No discussion yet of development. As taxpayers, we have to protect ourselves against this cost that we're just not going to be able to pay for.
Okay. Yeah, you would also have to convince the NCC to be open to developing that kind of land, right? Not an easy sell. I mean, we're talking about the National Capital Commission, right? So, yeah.
I think we are the problem.
We are the problem. Okay. All right. Thank you, Michael. Thank you. Okay. Yep. Break a few taboos. Sacrifice some sacred cows, I guess, which is what you would be talking about with the Greenbelt. Absolutely. Mike in Canada, you're on City News. Good morning, Mike.
Hey, good morning, Rob. It's pretty hard to follow up a Stalinist take. I don't know if I...
On the Greenbelt, Stalinist takes on the Greenbelt, yeah. I don't know.
I mean, and I think we saw what happened to Doug Ford about the Greenbelt around Toronto. That'll never happen. But just really wanted to acknowledge Blair there. What great insight into that, and just highlights the issues. But I think, Rob, I think the housing issue is kind of like a Sens game here about like why aren't the Sens selling out, right? There's multiple factors. There's not one definitive one. So, for instance, in my neighborhood, all my neighbors that have sold their houses, all my new neighbors are from either out of the city or out of the country.
Right.
And so if you compare that to those markets, Ottawa's a bargain. So we're just catching up to everybody else, right? So, I mean, you can say low interest rates, this and that, but you know, Ottawa's got an international airport. People are able to telecommute. That's what I'm seeing in my neighborhood, especially, is that people are coming from other regions. The other one is, you know, for the nonprofit housing discussion here, I sit on a couple of boards for that. Very well versed in it. Your substance abuse experts that you had on last week kind of highlighted it. It's not nonprofit housing or subsidized housing. It's supportive housing. That's what these people need, right? And if you have supportive housing, because it's a domino effect. If these people have too much responsibility, then they get behind on rent and all this other stuff, and they need.
But not everybody who's in rent-geared income housing. Or needs rent-geared income housing has a substance abuse problem, right? There could be any other, right? Yeah.
No, of course not, but it's a factor, right? So if you can help eliminate that factor. The other issue, too, is, once again, just building, right? Like companies that are in the construction business need to make a margin. And if you're dealing with inflating construction costs, if you're looking at capped rent markets and all of that, I mean, it's really hard to incentivize private sector to build these kind of institutions, right?
Okay, fair enough.
And we've seen that the government funding is just lacking behind it. So it takes a whole hard reset of what we're doing here. And it's I don't think it's a clear-cut issue. As much as the mayoral candidates are trying to paint it as, I think there's a bigger issue at bay that nobody wants to tackle.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Thank you for your call. Yep, 750-1310. Few lines available there again. Love to hear from you. We have about 15 minutes left here in the Talkback Hour. David says you're calling from Carleton University. David, the ivory towers of academia, David.
Yes. Well, this is actually a very passionate topic of mine, one I've written multiple papers on affordable housing. And the issue of affordable housing, not just in Ottawa, but in Ontario, is something that's been in the making for 30 years.
Why?
Pardon?
What are the root causes?
Well, the root causes date back to the 1980s when, there was a gradual reduction in the spending of affordable and social housing. And ultimately, in 1993, the federal government had cut affordable housing stock. And over the course of 1995 to 2002, there was no new affordable housing developed. And I think when we question why real estate developers are not building affordable housing, well, the reason is they're not being subsidized by the federal or the provincial government. And a 2007 report by the University of Toronto found that real estate developers were not building affordable housing because they deemed it a venture not profitable in their view because of those no subsidies. And so it's an issue that the government has created over a series of years. And I think that if we're to mitigate the issue, it's not just throwing money at the problem, but reinstituting those policies that were removed to help ease the.
Okay, so let's say we have David and Rob's Property Development Corporation. Okay, we're in the we want to build some homes. We'll build some apartments, whatever the case might be.
Yeah.
And there's a government program that we can take advantage of to build affordable housing. Say prior to the 1980s. for David and Rob's Property Development Corporation. What's a program like that look like? What could we do? What would we do?
Well, that's it. That is a tough question to answer, but I would say that.
But these programs you say existed before, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So there was. I don't remember the program names off the top of my head, but they were sort of like affordable housing initiatives that the federal government had, and then the provincial government had their own version of which were essentially subsidizing the cost of real estate development based on certain areas, and depending on where you were in Ontario, whether it be Toronto or Ottawa, those numbers varied because of the cost to develop those particular cities.
Yeah.
So I would say that I guess from a policy standpoint, reinstituting those policies were, they created incentive, just not by monetary, but...
Another thing is, David, I think, and I'm going to argue this coming up, real estate has become so important to the economy, it's become a big revenue stream for the government. Governments are addicted to the revenue from real estate.
Well, there's a lot of revenue to be made from property taxes and...
development charges, sir.
Yeah, and
if our company, David and Rob's Property Development Corporation, builds one semi-detached dwelling in Ottawa inside the Greenbelt, we have to pay the city of Ottawa $34,000 for one unit. That adds up. And outside the Greenbelt, it's more than $40,000. You think of all the houses that have been built outside the Greenbelt. How much is the city raking in every year in these development charges? Wouldn't you love to know? David, we got to run. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, be right back. Bye-bye. 1047, Rob Snow Show, City News.
Les abeilles butinent le fer. Réveille le rêve disparu pareil qu'hier. Mais pas le 9 à 5, puis le overtime qui paye même pas la routine. Anyways. Mon break va bientôt finir. 15 minutes, ça part dans le temps de dire riche, Summa. Mais le boulot, faut quand même se rendre là. C'est pour ça qu'on a le 9 à 5, puis le overtime qui paye même pas la routine. Anyways. Qu'on bâtisse la bâtisse ou non, on a besoin d'aide. Qu'on bâtisse les édifices ou non, on a besoin d'aide. La nuit, enfin la nuit, ma maman est sur le party. Elle cherche à avoir ses 100 ans, mais tabarnak, ça coûte cher en dedans. C'est pour ça qu'on a le 9 à 5, puis le overtime qui paye même pas la routine. Anyways. Qu'on bâtisse la bâtisse ou non, on a besoin d'aide. Qu'on bâtisse les édifices ou non, on a besoin d'aide.
Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
With the discussion about housing. Housing. And making Ottawa more livable. Gathering your ideas. I mean, anyone who's been paying any attention to the Conservative Party leadership race, you can't help but hear Pierre Poilievre talk about gatekeepers, right? You hear him say that over and over again, lines to the effect, we have to get the gatekeepers out of the way, the gatekeepers, meaning all the government red tape that makes it so time-consuming, so expensive to build houses. Those are the gatekeepers, the bureaucracy, the city planners, who keep imposing layer upon layer of regulations at the behest of their council masters, all designed to make housing more costly. Now, they try to blame it on speculators and greedy investors. They've taken to blaming foreigners. We have to have a tax on foreign ownership. Dastardly foreigners driving up the cost of housing, they say. They want to tax the speculators. But the much bigger problem is all the government hurdles in the way to building new houses. And I think that's one reason why Poilievre has struck a chord with some people when he hits on this theme, the gatekeepers. I mean, the development charges, I went through them here. Development charge for a single detached or semi-detached dwelling per unit, $34,000 inside the Greenbelt, $40,000 outside the Greenbelt. To build apartments, two-bedroom apartments. We need two-bedroom apartments. The developer pays almost $19,000 per unit for a development charge, $19,000 for a townhouse inside the Greenbelt, $27,000, $31,000 outside the Greenbelt. They're on par with the development charges across most of the GTA and some of the highest in North America. And if only the charges end there, then you have the sales taxes and the land transfer taxes and the application fees and the processing fees and the building permit fees and the new home warranty fees and the land dedications. Land dedications are like the cash and Leo Parkland that we talked about yesterday. That your wise city council just jacked up from 10% to 25%. Cash grab. And so many, they pretend this has nothing to do with the skyrocketing cost of housing and blame it on speculators and foreign buyers. Now, I don't know what Poilievre can really do about gatekeepers in the planning department at the city of Ottawa if he becomes prime minister. Is he going to come in and fire them all? But the federal government does send a lot of money to municipalities for capital projects like public housing and public transit. And there's been some speculation that some of that funding could be tied to getting shovels in the ground on housing projects, with targets being set and having to be met in order to qualify for the funding, just as one example. Local government has a massive role to play in the cost of housing, and it is far from blameless for the mess that we are in now. Tony in Orleans. Tony.
Hi, Rob.
Hi, Tony.
First-time caller.
Appreciate it.
A little bit nervous, but
that's okay. Take your time.
Through.
Yep.
I think the right message is that big developers, they're being costed out. There are a lot of rules and regulations for them. Mm-hmm. But I'd like to speak to the smaller investors who provide roughly about 40% of the rental housing in Ottawa, according to CMHC in 2017.
Okay.
So I think since about January 2020, the City of Ottawa has passed roughly, I believe it's 6 rental housing regulations. Some of them added costs to smaller investors. And when I say smaller investors, they're building secondary dwelling units, maybe coach houses, maybe small infills, and they'll buy some homes and rent them out.
Yep.
But I think overall you hit the nail on the head in that Ottawa's become very unfriendly. Years ago when I started investing and we built many secondary dwelling units, Ottawa used to be reasonably friendly for us to come in terms of version of city council. Has made it fairly unfriendly, just in terms of the number of regulations. For example, the vacant building bylaw that was just passed.
Right.
Well, if I'm trying to renovate a semi-detached home after a tenant moves out and it is vacant for 120 days, sometimes it's taking that long because of supply chain issues and finding the right trades nowadays.
Right.
We have to apply for a license that costs $1,700. And
$1,700.
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
Smokes. Wow.
Yeah. So it's all these little things that have added up, and many, myself included, like I'm not buying or investing in Ottawa anymore. We're looking in more landlord-friendly areas, and many of us are selling off and moving to more friendly places. So I think there's just too many regulations from a smaller landlord. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Tony.
You're welcome.
Yeah, very interesting.
Have a good day.
Yeah, you too. You too. Another thing to keep an eye on. I'm going to be interested, just based on the what happens with the makeup of the council, and see how far this goes. Land transfer tax. Keep an eye on this. When you buy a house, you pay the land transfer tax to the provincial government. We have left-wing candidates in Ottawa, endorsed by Horizon Ottawa. In their so-called alternative budget from Horizon Ottawa, they want a municipal land transfer tax. They call for that, which would be 2% on most of the housing units. All housing units priced between $400,000 to $2 million, which would be most of the housing units that are for sale in Ottawa, $400,000 to $2 million. They claim it would crack down on speculation. But on an $800,000 house, which, again, not unusual these days in Ottawa, $800,000 house, that's an added $13,000. Almost 13. It's like $12,725 or something like that. You're already paying a land transfer tax of $13,000 to the province. You really want to pay another $13,000 to the city, too, when you buy a house? What does that do for affordability and livability? It makes the city less unaffordable and less livable. This is the Rob Snow Show, and this is City News.
Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, September 7th. Good morning. I am Damilola Unime. Right now in Ottawa, it is 19, and in Smiths Falls, it is 20 degrees. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Tickets for the Detchou Dream Home of a Lifetime are now up for sale. The top prize is, of course, a home. And this year, the home is located in Kanata. Steve Reed, acting CEO of the Detchou Foundation, says the Dream Home of a Lifetime lottery has provided over $80 million in funding for the last 30 years. And that money has been used to provide the best equipment in the hands of clinicians and also programming for kids and their families who visit the hospital for care.
And it's allowed us to fuel the groundbreaking research that is leading to new diagnoses and new treatments for those kids. Research like mental health research and oncology research, or the COVID-19 wastewater program that you heard about that has shaped so much of our pandemic response and the public health as well. So,
and there are many prizes up for grabs this year, including the home, a vehicle, and many other prizes at just under $3.5 million total. There's also an early bird prize plus a 50-50 draw to stand a chance to win one of the many prizes up for grabs. You can buy a lottery ticket. Now, remember, 50-50 tickets are only sold to those who purchase the lottery as well. For more information, go to cheodreamofalifetime.ca. And candidates running for Ottawa Mayor will discuss their plans for the environment at a debate scheduled for this evening. Tonight's debate is the third of the four planned before voting day in October. It will be held at the Orleans United Church on Orleans Boulevard. And 9 of the 14 mayoral candidates will be present. The debate starts at 6 and ends at 8 p.m. Now, with the weather forecast for Ottawa and the Valley, here is City News meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Plenty of sunshine and warmer air for us for the rest of this week. The high 25 degrees will feel like 30 today. Tonight, clear and 12. And tomorrow, plenty of sunshine. 28 degrees will feel like 32. For today, the high 25.
City News time is 11:02. It's World Clean Air Day. And there's a warning from the United Nations that the air that keeps us alive is also making us sick. City News reporter Jamie Pulfer with the details.
The World Meteorological Organization is the United Nations authoritative voice on weather, climate, and water. Its annual Air Quality and Climate Bulletin warns that more frequent and intense heat waves and wildfires driven by climate change are expected to worsen the quality of air we breathe, harming human health and ecosystems. It cautions that hundreds of millions of people could be impacted over the coming century.
And when people are exposed to air pollution and extreme heat, their risk of death is some 20% higher. Climate change and air pollution are a deadly duo.
That's the UN Secretary General, who says air is something we all share, so it's time to take action to rein in the harm, with calls to invest in renewable energy, move away from fossil fuels, and shift to zero-emission vehicles. Just some of the things he says would save millions of lives and slow climate change. Jamie Pulfer, City News.
And the RCMP has released the names and photos of the 10 people killed in the Labor Day weekend stabbing rampage in Saskatchewan. They say it was done in collaboration with the Saskatchewan Coroner's Service and the families of the deceased. The hunt for 32-year-old suspect Miles Sanderson is entering its fourth day. Now, the dead include 9 people from James Smith Cree Nation, northeast of Saskatoon, and 1 man from the nearby village of Weldon, and ranging age from 23 to 78. I am Damilola Unime. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's a pillar of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Heave hi, oh, the best man in Ottawa was Mufferaw Joe. Big Joe Mufferaw paddled into Mattawa all the way from Ottawa in just one day. Hey, on the River Ottawa, the best man we ever saw was Big Joe Mufferaw, the old folks say. Come and listen and I'll tell you what the old folks say. And he say Big Joe had an old pet frog, bigger than a horse, and he barked like a dog. And the only thing quicker than a train upon a track was Big Joe riding on the bullfrog's back. Heave hi, ho, the best man in Ottawa was Mufferaw Joe.
All right, let's at the update from up the line. Bruce McIntyre is here from the Eganville Leader, our Ottawa Valley correspondent. You read him from time to time, ottawa.citynews.ca. Morning. How are you, Bruce McIntyre?
Rob.
Yeah.
We are here live
Good.
and on location.
Awesome. And no breaking news to report this morning.
No breaking news. Construction going on. That's about it.
Yeah. Holy cow. So the whole province, the whole country's one big construction zone.
It's unreal.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good. It builds infrastructure, keeps the economy going, but wow.
Well, you have a lot of highway construction happening as well, right?
We have, Rob, in the county of Brantford, we have over 900 freshwater lakes. We have 5 major rivers, and we have 4 major highways, plus all the county roads.
Yeah.
So
okay.
It's a busy spot.
The Eganville Leader is Brantford County's largest paid circulation newspaper. It's independently owned since 1902. This is 2022. Been around a long time. It's into its 121st year, and it's on sale now. $3, including GST. On
What a
sale
deal.
today. Yep. Screaming deal. And what do you got this week? I see you're having an all-candidates night on September 29th. That'll be exciting.
Those are always fun and exciting and not really worth a lot, but I enjoy them. But come on, Rob. You got 15 people up on the stage. They all want to be counselors. They're all going to tell you why to vote for them. It's like,
sure.
It's not a debate. It's just
have it out. You're going to have it out at the Bonashir Valley for the grand title, Bonashir Valley Township. Seats are on the line.
We're too nice about to fight it out. Listen, Yucca-Busky and Sean Conway are first cousins, and they battle each other. They didn't battle each other when Mr. Conway resigned as the MVP. John said, "Okay, now I'll run." I made him a promise. I wouldn't run.
Right.
So we're very friendly up here.
September 29th, 7 p.m. Eganville Legion is the place to be. Okay. Thursday. Right.
Dog pound. That'll be the big item. Dog pound and RVs.
Okay. The evening will begin at 7 p.m. The format will be for each candidate to have a chance to give their prepared opening remarks. 2 minutes are allotted for council candidates, 4 minutes for mayoral candidates. How will you solve the housing crisis? You have 4 minutes. This will... Even I get longer than that. This will be followed by a question and answer session, submitted and approved by a panel. Your question has to be approved by a panel.
That's right. He runs a tight ship.
All right. Okay. All right. So that's for Bonashir Valley Township. What is that? Bonashir Valley Township.
That is takes in Griffith, Eganville, Foymount, and a couple other little hamlets in there. It's big. Bonashir River is one of the major borders, so you can take it from there.
Okay. Any other municipal election news? Any buzz? What are you hearing? What do you know? Come on.
Well, the buzz in Renfrew is it's a quiet buzz. We have 2 councillors. I think it's going to be a split. I think you may see an upset there. I don't know, because 2 of the candidates are quite different. Tom Sidney represents, you know who he is the twin brother of? The Lieutenant Governor of Pennsylvania. You know, Fetterman?
Okay, all right.
He looks just like Fetterman. I swear to goodness.
Oh, like he's a doppelganger, you mean? He's not really his twin brother. Yeah, okay.
No,
all right.
But he's got a big man. He's got a tattoo on the back of his head. He was 25 years, worked for the Robbie Dean Center and the Suicide Intervention Crisis Center. So he knows how to talk, but he's very progressive. And he's going up against Sandy Hines, who was a mayor for 12 years, an excellent mayor. But one of the things she always says, well, we used to do it this way. So you have those 2 clashes, and we have Kate Wendell, the barber. She's coming in. Kate, bless her heart, she's very idealistic, great ideas. Sometimes they're hard to implement. And Mike Koulis is, I don't want to say the dark horse, but he is the one who doesn't mind griping at his fellow councillors during council meetings when they award millions of dollars to a firm that he thinks shouldn't get it.
Right.
So it'll be interesting at the all candidates debate. But I do miss. I'm just happy that Cal Scott is signed up, because Cal is famous for Renfrew. He always runs for mayor or Reeve. 2 terms ago, he rolled a toilet paper across the entire floor of the stage. He says, "There's so many complaints, I don't know where to start. I mean, toilet paper can't get them all down." Shock value, he got it.
I bet. Okay. All right. We'll see what happens on municipal election night. because all the municipal elections, of course, are held on the same day in Ontario. So
yeah,
you'll have to jump on the radio with us on that night.
I don't mind. We have transformers and as well. It'll be some that might be a slow count. They still count by hand and paper copies. For example, North Algona Wilberforce last time took 5.5 hours.
5.5 hours.
Yeah, they went till 2 in the morning.
Holy okay, yeah. All right. So let's move along. Last Wednesday, outside the County of Renfrew building, they had a ceremony for a reconciliation garden. What do you know about that?
It's a beautiful garden. It's the County of Renfrew has made a very deliberate point the last 5 or 6 years to be very inclusive to the Coquitlam community. They always have been, but they've really been even more inclusive. Before the reconciliation even became, I don't want to say trendy, but more people knew about it. So they commissioned artists to get the garden made up at the County of Renfrew, and it's just a beautiful, and it's a healing garden. And it's meant for anyone, actually, but First Nations people especially, or anyone just to go, think, reflect, and just recollect and just, heal. If you don't do, that's the place to go. It's a beautiful garden, and it was opened, and I would recommend anyone to go in the county, or any visitors go see it. It's just an amazing site.
Bruce McIntyre is with us. He's with the Eganville Leader. Tell me about the Rice family farm.
Oh, bless her heart. Loretta Rice. She is the patriarch of the family. They've been around for 175 years. That's a long time to be in business. Fifth generation farmers, and they're very active in the National Farm Union. At least Loretta is. Very, very active. She's been a lifetime member. And she's the one, when the Renfrew Fair opens up this week, it starts tomorrow, she'll be the one down there in the kids' animal section, watching the kids and make sure things get running on hand. She's the one that always has a plate of cookies for us at Christmas time. She comes in to the Eganville Leader office, brings in 2 big plates of homemade cookies. So she's just that type of woman, and the family, they live on the Rice line, which is not hard to believe. And the fifth generation now, they've got it going as well. They've kept that farm going, and it's at the corner. It's an intersection in the middle of the country, and you recognize it right away. So congratulations to them, and it's a very prestigious honor. Not many 175-year-old farms around anymore.
Okay. Renfrew has a hockey museum, and it has a new souvenir from the Great One.
The Great One, yeah. It's the NHL and Hockey Museum. We had the Stanley Cup a couple of years ago because Renfrew is the birthplace of the modern-day NHL. So Kathy Gretzky, sister of Wayne, and cousin of Wayne, I apologize, sorry. And her husband passed away last year. He was a Gretzky, and believe it or not, he had a restaurant down in the county called Gretzky's. And so when Wayne came through, he wasn't sure if he could get away with that, copyright and all. And so he also had inside the bar the Oilers. And Wayne came by and autographed his 1984 Canada Cup poster, said, "You keep it." And that's, anyone asked, tell him Wayne Gretzky said, "It's fine. Don't worry about the copyright."
Okay.
So
cool.
It's down in Quadville, same place where Al Capone's hideaway shack was as well. So Quadville gets some very interesting characters down there. And so it's now a part of the museum in the NHL Museum. It's a very unique museum, very localized. Emphasizes all the local players that came out of here, like terrible Ted Lindsay and other players. And it's a 5 business. It's all volunteer driven. No money is put in by the town. It's all volunteers. So one of those little gems you discover.
Douglas, this is what Bruce sent me. Douglas is the Bermuda Triangle for trapping transports. Please explain.
If anyone's ever gone through Douglas on a Saturday night around the curve, when you're coming from Renfrew towards Eganville, it's a very sharp 90-degree turn.
Okay.
It's very sharp.
Okay.
If you're transport, you've got to not only make that turn, you've got to get the gas going to get up that hill. And more often than not lately, they're not making it. So they're getting stuck in Douglas, and we've had to call on 2 or 3 occasions in the last few months the heavy equipment to come get them, tow them up the hill or just to get them going. So I said to Gerald, my boss, I said, I think we've got a Bermuda Triangle down here. We can make some money off this, We'll just say, tell them they got transported back in time. There's many buggies. They won't know the difference. They'll think it's 1910. So we'll, that's my newest tour thing. And probably won't work, though.
So the Renfrew Fair must start tomorrow, I guess, does it?
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gone from being.
That's where I first met you. That's where I first met you.
Yeah, that was your lucky day. It's gone from 5 days down to 4 days, and the big demolition derby, that'll be a separate event on Saturday, and all the music, the headliners will be inside They did that last year as well when they had their little mini fair, and that way it allows more room for the horses, less changing around the venues, because as you know, Rob, like the Renfrew Fair, like any organization, losing volunteers. So the pool is getting a little smaller each year, so why not make it less work for them and have these larger venues where they can just, instead of changing twice or 3 times a day, just change it once. So it's done. So, and of course, the famous back bacon on a bun, the Rotary Club will be there. And I was talking to the president yesterday. This is by far the most vendors they've ever had at the fair this year. Yeah. So I'm very encouraged by that.
Excellent. So, I have been to the Renfrew Fair. I have met Bruce at the Renfrew Fair. That's where I first met Bruce, was at the Renfrew Fair.
Did you
way back in the day.
Did you get a bacon on a bun when you were there?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so.
Rob.
But this past weekend, they just had the Shawville Fair. I didn't make it, but I've always wanted. That's one of the few I've never been to is the Shawville Fair.
I've gone a few times. I haven't gone for the last few years.
It's apparently a big one. It's a big one, right?
It's the biggie. It's the one that had Stompin' Tom Connors attract 40,000 people.
Yeah.
So that's the place. Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's it. You and me.
That's it.
Done for this week. Thanks for the update from Up the Line, Bruce.
Thank you, Rob, and enjoy the week.
You too. Bruce McIntyre with the Eganville Leader, 1116 Rob Snow Show on City News.
The sun's calling, change with the warning. I won't win anything if I give everything.
I was so excited when I found out that I was given this grant to be able to make this concert, because I knew it was going to be the first opportunity that I was able to play these songs for others. This album was recorded really, truly in isolation. Like everybody else, we were locked down for a bit. So you're going to see, I think, the joy of playing live, of being together.
For me, as someone who owns a business in Ottawa that's directly working with music, I own a recording studio, it is important because it gives a sense of confidence in terms of having support from a lot of different places. We all know in Canada, there are all kinds of city, provincial, and federal people who provide funding for artists, and just seeing how invested Ottawa is and expanding the reputation of Ottawa as a music and entertainment city, running a business in that city, it makes you just feel better that someone's going to support you, help you, and have your back.
Well, firstly, I'm seeing friends that I haven't seen in 2 years, so that is kind of stabbing me in the heart a little bit, but I'm also just so happy to be able to make art with all of these friends again. And I've been treated like an absolute rock star from the moment I just kind of knocked on the door and said, hey, can I unload my gear? Everybody's so helpful, and you're just used to kind of dragging all your stuff around, and it's such a hard business to be in. So this is a dream come true for any local artist who gets to participate in a series like this.
Oh, I feel like I need to keep pinching myself. It's an amazing experience and opportunity for us, so thank you so much. It's been a long couple months. Our last show was in December. This is the first time we've actually been in the same room together since. So it's really an amazing opportunity for us, and the beautiful theater, and to have Rogers here, and thank you, Mike, and so it's a dream come true.
I'm here with one of my best friends, Alex, and we haven't performed in almost 2 years because of COVID. And it feels really good to be back on a big stage like Meridian, and I'm really honored that you guys invited me here today.
Having an organization that lets the artists do their thing with such a range of styles and influence, and to kind of have that ability to meet the public and to meet the people who would listen to them, can't be overstated. So super excited about it. I know a lot of musicians in town and a lot of music lovers in town who are really excited about it too. So I mean, it's an event in which there's talk, there's a lot of buzz around it, and I wouldn't be surprised if it goes on for a long time and does a lot of great things for local musicians and connecting them with the listeners that love them.
He's the opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
75 basis point hike from the Bank of Canada announced this morning. There is a statement to go along with the rate announcement, and there will be a news conference tomorrow from the Governor of the Bank of Canada. But we're not waiting until tomorrow. We're getting the experts on today. One of them is Benjamin Tell. He is the Deputy Chief Economist of CIBC World Markets. Good morning.
Good morning.
What do you think of the news from the Bank of Canada?
No big surprise. The Bank of Canada is trying to make sure that you and I believe that they are in control and inflation will be in control. And that's something that the bank has been trying to do for a while, basically make sure that we understand that they mean business. And they have to demonstrate that they mean business. That's why back then they raised interest rates by 100 basis points, a full percent point. And now they raised it by another 75 basis points. And in the language, they're telling you we are not done, we are not there yet. Yeah. So clearly a bank that is seeing controlling inflation as a major target.
It seems to me, in reading through the statement that was released this morning, what they're really worried about is what they're seeing in their core inflation figures. That there's a broadening, it says there's a broadening of price pressures. Why is that worrying for the Bank of Canada?
Yes, it's all about inflation expectations. If inflation goes up because of the fact that gasoline prices go up, then no big deal because gasoline prices go down and inflation goes down. But if it's actually in the core, namely outside by gasoline and food, it means that it's more broadly based and therefore can impact the psyche of consumers. What I mean by that is that the Bank of Canada and the US Fed really care not about inflation today, but what you and me think about future inflation expectations. And they have established their reputation over the past 40 years as inflation fighters, and they're not going to toss it away. And that's why their enemy now is rising inflation expectations. And the more broadly based the increase in inflation is, the higher the likelihood that inflation expectations will rise. And that's why they're fighting it.
Okay. The Bank of Canada's overnight rate is now 3.25%. And not done. So how many more of these are left, do you think?
Yes, I think at least another 50 basis points coming in September or in October. I think that the Bank of Canada would like to make sure that they don't leave any room for error. What I mean by that is that if inflation is more sticky than perceived, you really have to buy some insurance and to raise interest rates a bit more than what we have now. The risk, of course, is that you are overshooting. Let me remind you that every economic recession over the past 40 years was helped, if not caused, by a monetary policy error in which central bankers raised interest rates way too much and basically led to a recession. The reason why it's happening is because of the fact that inflation at the end of the day is a lagging indicator. It tells you what happened in the past. Usually inflation peaks 6 months after the beginning of a recession. So that's the risk that we are facing. But the Bank of Canada is willing to take that risk. If you give the Bank of Canada two options, one is inflation expectations rising, and the other is a recession, they will take a recession any day. This means that this bank is willing to overshoot in order to make sure that inflation does not rise.
Okay. The Bank of Canada, again, in its statement, notes that the economy was a little weaker than expected, but still, running along at a 3.3% clip here. It points to strong business investment as something that it is watching as well. And consumption, which was up by 9.5%. Business investment was up close to 12%. So domestic demand is very strong.
Exactly, and especially the consumer, because they will take a business investment any day because that's good for productivity. Yeah. But the consumer is the issue. The consumer is 65% of the economy. People are spending like there's no tomorrow, especially on services because of pent-up demand. And we have the money to spend because we have this excess savings of about $300 billion. So that's stimulate the economy and limit the ability of the Bank of Canada to control demand. And therefore you have to raise interest rates even higher to make sure that the economy is slowing. Now, remember, that's a very difficult thing to do. Why? Because 60 to 65% of inflation that we are witnessing now is coming from the outside, coming from supply chain. Okay. The Bank of Canada, the Fed cannot control it. So you try to control inflation using 40% target, and that's very difficult.
Yeah. The goal is to engineer what's been called in the financial media a soft landing. You want to dampen demand, but you don't want to cause a recession. But if you have to have a recession, well, let's hope it's a mild recession. 3.3% GDP in the second quarter, consumption 9.5%, business investment 12% after 5 rate hikes. Is it that they're engineering a soft landing, or is it that they've only, those rate hikes really haven't had their full effect yet? What
absolutely. It takes time. And actually, if you look at the numbers for July, they're already negative. So we're going to get close to zero second half of the year in terms of GDP. So it's starting to work. Look at the housing market. It's starting to work, and it will continue to work. But you need more. And that's exactly what the Bank of Canada is telling you. So it's all about making sure that the economy is slowing down. Now, remember, in order to have a real recession, you need some damage in the labor market. The labor market is still on fire. We have 1 million vacancies. So clearly this labor market is a market that is very, very strong. And therefore, without significant damage there, this is not going to be a real recession. You might have 2 quarters of negative growth, but in my books, it's not a recession without a major damage to the labor market. And the only way to get it is to overshoot on interest rates.
Yeah, I want to ask you about something else. I mean, here we have the Bank of Canada has just raised interest rates by 75 basis points, which I know it was 100 last time, but here's another 75, what we would call like a supersized rate hike. And yet the Canadian dollar has barely moved. It's at 75.9 cents US right now. The pound, lowest since 1985. The euro is below par with the U.S. dollar. You have all these other currencies that are on the weak side. The U.S. dollar rallying, as measured by the U.S. dollar index, is up almost 12% in the last 6 months or so. What are the economic ramifications of having the U.S. dollar so strong and all these other currencies so weak, Benjamin Tell?
Yes, this has been the case for a long period of time. The U.S. dollar has been the only kid in town, if you wish, and people are gravitated into the strength of the U.S. dollar because whenever people are nervous, they go to the safety of the U.S. bond market, and that's exactly what's happening. In addition, Europe, of course, has its own problems. We're talking about the terrible situation in Ukraine and the energy situation. Basically, they are in a recession. The Bank of England is trying to engineer a recession. So the U.S. looks like relatively good. Add to it the fact that interest rates there are rising much faster than people expected until recently, and that's something that is definitely helping the U.S. dollar. So it's not helping us that the Bank of Canada is raising interest rates because the Fed is also raising interest rates, and therefore this is not helping. We know that the global economy is slowing, China is slowing, energy prices are slowing. That's negative for the Canadian dollar. So that's basically what's happening here.
Okay. Benjamin Tell, always nice to have your insight on a big news day like this for the Bank of Canada. Thanks so much.
A pleasure. Thank you.
That's the Deputy Chief Economist at the Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce, Benjamin Tell. Back after the news, Geoffrey Johnston will join us from the Kingston Whig Standard. Look at some of the big international news. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
For local news in Ottawa and the Valley, this is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, September 7th. Good morning, I'm Danielle Bain. Right now in Ottawa and Smiths Falls, partly cloudy skies and 21 degrees. Here's what's making news this hour. The case of an Eastern Ontario doctor charged with killing 4 people has been put over to September 21st. Dr. Bryan Nadler was initially charged with first-degree murder last year in the death of an 89-year-old at the Hawkesbury and District General Hospital. Police laid 3 additional charges of first-degree murder against him last month in the deaths of 3 more seniors. Court documents allege the first victim was killed on March 25th, 2021, and the 3 others on or around that date. Nadler's lawyers maintain their client's innocence and say his patients died from COVID-19. Tickets for the Detchou Dream Home of a Lifetime are now up for sale. The top prize is a home this year in Canada. Steve Reed, acting CEO of the Detchou Foundation, says the Dream Home of a Lifetime lottery has provided over $80 million in funding over the last 30 years. And that money has been used to provide the best equipment in the hands of clinicians and programming for kids and their families who visit the hospital for care. The Bank of Canada has raised its key interest rate an additional 75 basis points to 3.25%. The bank says short-term inflation expectations remain high, and given the outlook for inflation, the governing council still judges that the policy interest rate will need to rise further. City News Time, 11:32. I'm Danielle Bain for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Geoffrey Johnston is here, Kingston Whig Standard International Affairs columnist. Good morning, Geoffrey Johnston.
Good morning, Rob.
Hope you're well these days.
Yes, I am. Thank you.
It's a complicated world out there. But I'll tell you what, they don't waste any time getting down to business in the UK. They had the Conservative leadership race. It was won by Liz Truss. Within 36 hours, Liz Truss has picked a cabinet and this morning did her first what's called Prime Minister's Questions, held every Wednesday in the UK Parliament. And that's when the Prime Minister stands there and takes all the questions from the opposition. They're having a terrible time, as you know, Geoffrey, in that country. And for our listeners, I just wanted to play a little bit of the question period. A lot of it is about windfall taxes and the energy crisis. And the leader of the opposition in the UK is the leader of the Labour Party, and his name is Keir Starmer. And this is Keir Starmer versus the new Prime Minister, Liz Truss.
We now come to the Leader of the Opposition, Keir Starmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I congratulate the Prime Minister on her appointment? When she said in her leadership campaign that she was against windfall taxes, did she mean it?
Yeah. Very good question.
Well, I thank the right honourable gentleman for his welcome. I hope that we will be able to work together, particularly on areas we agree on. And I know that we have had strong support from the opposition in opposing Vladimir Putin's appalling war in Ukraine. And I want us to continue to stand up to that appalling Russian aggression that has led to the energy crisis we face now. I am against a windfall tax. I believe it is the wrong thing to be putting companies off investing in the United Kingdom just when we need to be growing the economy.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for that answer. I ask because the Treasury estimates are that the energy producers will make £170 billion in excess profits over the next 2 years. The Prime Minister knows she's no choice but to back an energy price freeze. Yeah. But it won't be cheap, and the real choice, the political choice, is who is going to pay. Is she really telling us that she's going to leave these vast excess profits on the table and make working people foot the bill for decades to come?
understand that people across our country are struggling with the cost of living and they're struggling with their energy bills. And that is why I, as Prime Minister, will take immediate action to help people with the cost of their energy bills. And I will be making an announcement to this House on that tomorrow and giving people certainty to make sure that they are able to get through this winter and be able to have the energy supplies and be able to afford it. But we can't just deal with today's problem. We can't just put a sticking plaster on it. What we need to do is increase our energy supplies long term. And that is why we will open up more supply in the North Sea, which the Honourable Gentleman has opposed. That is why we will build more nuclear power stations, which the Labour Party didn't do when they were in office. And that is why we will get on with delivering the supply as well as helping people through the winter.
She was the foreign secretary.
I look forward to tomorrow's
So there are reports in the news media, if you can believe this. Geoffrey Johnston is with us, international affairs columnist, Kingston Whig Standard, keen observer of international affairs, that this energy relief package that the Conservative government in the UK, under this new Prime Minister, who said she's going to run as a Conservative, could cost 200 billion British pounds, which is more than the UK spends on the NHS in a year. In other words, it's more than the UK spends on healthcare in a year. That's how bad it is, Geoffrey Johnston. That's how bad the energy crisis is at the UK. They had one of the MPs stood in the House and pleaded with the Prime Minister, you have to do something. The pub in my constituency, one of the pubs in my constituency, the last year's bill, utility bills were £32,000. This year, £320,000. They've gone up 10 times for a pub. That's how bad it is. It's crazy.
Yeah, and it was the late Tip O'Neill, former Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives, said all politics is local. So these big geopolitical issues ultimately filter down to the local level, and that can change national politics. Yeah, the geopolitical angle in all of this is the war, the Russian war of aggression on Ukraine, and Vladimir Putin is trying to drive a wedge between the Western allies, which are supporting Ukraine against this Russian invasion and actually genocide, and he's trying to weaponize energy. So we're into the fall now. Unofficially, it's fall. And the Europeans are really worried because they haven't fully filled up their storage tanks for natural gas for the coming winter. And Russia is a major supplier of gas for Europe. And so this is going to be a big issue in the coming weeks and months. And there are going to be governments across Europe facing these issues. So we're going to see a lot in the very near future. But my favorite part of this Liz Truss story, as with any prime minister when they first take up the role, is the meeting between the prospective prime minister and the monarch, Queen Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Now, the Queen has not been in great health, and so it was decided that Liz Truss would travel to the Queen's estate in Scotland, Balmoral, and that's a long journey. It's about 1,000 miles, and I think a lot of people were pleased to actually see photographs of the Queen yesterday because she hadn't been seen since, I believe, July 21st, and because she is in such frail health. But anybody who watches the mini-series, The Crown, is fascinated with this kind of thing because, the young Queen Elizabeth first meets Winston Churchill, and then she goes through all these different prime ministers, and Liz Truss is now the 15th prime minister.
Prime minister, yeah.
Yeah, that has been dealing with Queen Elizabeth. So it was quite a historic.
Well, the Conservatives send them a lot. This is the fourth in 6 years, so.
Yeah, that's very true.
Okay.
And Boris Johnson, I believe, had to apologize twice to Queen Elizabeth over a number of gaffes. One of them was having that party the night before the funeral for Prince Philip, which I probably did not go over well with the Queen. But there's also a Canadian angle to all of this. So the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau congratulated Liz Truss on becoming the Prime Minister. Now, Canada, and the United Kingdom are, long-time allies. We have a deep commercial relationship with them. The UK is Canada's largest commercial partner in Europe. Canada and the UK are negotiating a free trade agreement as we speak. The UK wants to become a partner in the comprehensive Progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership. That's a big deal with 11 countries like Canada, Chile, New Zealand, Japan, and they're in the final phase of that. So that could be a really big deal because the United Kingdom, as you know, Rob, left Brexit. Left the European Union, Brexit. So this is a big deal. And then also, the UK could be a big partner on climate change because the UK has got a goal to become the first net zero cap and trade market in the world. And then finally, Ukraine. The UK under Boris Johnson was a staunch supporter of Ukraine. We talked about that time that Boris Johnson went to Kyiv during some of the dark days of the war, and Liz Truss has also been a strong advocate for Ukraine. So I expect that to continue, and I expect Canada and the UK to continue to cooperate to support Ukraine.
Wow. Sounds like you have a column in the works, my friend.
Yep.
Very good. Very good. What do you make of this? There's a Washington Post story this morning reporting the discovery of foreign government's military defenses, including its capabilities found during the FBI search of former President Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate last month. What do you think of that?
Well,
nuclear secrets, Geoffrey. Nuclear secrets.
Hats off to the Washington Post. I subscribed to the Post, and I read that story within an hour of it being posted last night.
Okay.
It is very disturbing, Rob.
Okay.
Very disturbing. This is going to have far-reaching consequences. One, so this material is about the capabilities, nuclear defenses and nuclear capabilities of foreign governments. So this could be an ally, or this could be an opponent of the United States. Any way you slice it, this information, if it got into the wrong hands, and there are very few people who are actually allowed to see this. The president's allowed to see it, select cabinet secretaries. The FBI agents, when they found this stuff, they're not even allowed to look at it. The prosecutors aren't allowed to look at it. Some of even the highest intelligence officers in the U.S. government aren't allowed to look at this stuff. So you can bet that the Russians, the Chinese, the Israelis, allies, and opponents alike all want to get a hold of this. But it says a lot about America's intelligence capabilities. So if this information is about, for example, and I'm speculating, if it's about Russia's capabilities, that information also tells America's opponents about America's ability to gather this information, what their intelligence networks are like. So this could really jeopardize the national security of the United States and its allies. Moreover, if it turns out to be an ally, allies are not going to want to share information with the United States ever again, because this puts them in danger. And we're going to probably never know for sure if this information has gotten out, because even though these documents were physically there, somebody could have gotten into that storage room, because that's all it was. It was just a storage room. Somebody could have gone in there with a smartphone or a scanner and scanned all these documents and left them physically there, and then taken them back to their government. And then there's another concern. There could be more documents at other Trump locations. We don't know for sure. And I imagine at some point that DOJ is going to be raiding, the Bedminster golf course in New Jersey or Trump Tower, because, I don't see how responsibly they cannot do that, because they really need to get a hold of this material, because it's national security. This is the gravest of material.
Wow. Okay. 11:45. And we only have a couple of minutes left. Geoffrey's latest column for the Kingston Whig Standard is about COVID inequity. You were writing about this in the earliest days of the vaccination rollout. Here we are, it's September of 2022 now. What is the latest on when it comes to, say, treating COVID-19, the therapeutics that are available, for example, what's the latest on that?
Well, see, the most effective therapeutic is this Pfizer drug called Paxlovid, and it has been recommended by the World Health Organization. But as you said, just as there was an unequal or inequitable rollout of vaccines around the world, so the rich countries bought up all the advanced orders of the vaccines, and the developing countries, low and middle income countries, didn't have access to it till very late in the game. And the COVAX facility, which was set up to ensure equitable access, couldn't even buy supply because the rich countries had hoarded so much vaccine they didn't even need it. The same thing is now happening with Paxlovid. Paxlovid, if taken early, can prevent people who are at high risk, seniors, elderly, unvaccinated, immune compromised, from getting really sick. But it has to be taken early on. And the fact is that low and middle income countries have been priced out of the market. The rich countries have made a lot of deals. These deals are not transparent, and a lot more needs to be done. So the World Health Organization and the Global Fund have set up a mechanism, sort of like COVAX was for vaccines, to ensure the equitable distribution of these therapeutic drugs, these antiviral drugs. But there needs to be transparency. There needs to be reasonable pricing, and there needs to be equitable access around the world. And we also probably need generic drugs so that the poorer countries can purchase them. The World Health Organization says that these generic drugs probably won't be available until 2023, and as a result, many people will die needlessly because they won't have access to these antiviral medications.
Okay. More great work from you in the Whig again this week, Geoffrey. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Rob.
Yeah, bye-bye. Geoffrey Johnston from the Kingston Whig Standard. 11:47, we'll get some local reaction with the Bank of Canada raising interest rates today. Frank Napolitano from MortgageBrokersOttawa.com is going to join us coming up next. And a snapshot of the local situation here. This is City News.
Electric Sport RC is a indoor RC facility with 3 different courses, all under one roof. We have bashing, crawling, and racing. And bashing you can see just right here to my left. It's a dirt track, kind of like a skate park, but for RC trucks. Change it up regularly. It's a lot of fun. Kids just love to rip through the dirt, and so do adults. And then right behind me over here is our crawler track. You essentially drive an RC truck, one of these bigger ones, over an obstacle course made out of rocks, wood, and dirt, and other things. We've got some bridges, some rope bridges, all sorts of challenges. Very challenging and addictive, and it's fun to do with kids and parents alike. And then we also have the race course, which is 10,000 square feet and 600 tons of clay.
Wow.
It's great for taking all sorts of cars around, but we also have a racing community of about 30 drivers. They tinker with their cars. It's a really good entry point for kids to learn about electronics and engineering while they try to edge their competition for the thrill of the win.
What a great, Dan, as I said, I can see it becoming, addictive and, people working on their machines constantly to improve them and that sort of thing. So you have different sort of days, right? So let's talk about Wednesday nights, first of all. What's the setup for Wednesday nights?
Wednesday night, it's about 30 drivers who get together. It's a pretty intense competition. They're really fine-tuning their cars. We also have Friday nights, which are a bit more relaxed. It's a bit less about who's winning and more just a great place for people to get more into the racing hobby. And then Saturdays and Sundays are just kind of a more open family type atmosphere. All 3 courses are there to play on, and it's just a great atmosphere with welcoming community and people who just want to enjoy playing with toys.
Dan, let's talk about the popularity of the sport, because as I said, I can see people immediately falling in love with it, whether you're doing it competitively or just recreationally. Over the years, what sort of popularity have you seen? Have you seen a growth in the popularity of the sport?
Absolutely, especially in the recent years with the pandemic. People have been buying RC cars to play with at home, in their yards, on the street, or in parks. We built this facility because we wanted to have a place that's specifically built for RC cars that families can come to. It's just great for all ages, and you can get into any type of RC driving while you're here. If you just go on our website, you can Google Electrosport RC to find us. You can sign up there for an introductory session. We'll show you around the facility, get you up and going.
Keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Bank of Canada Day. Let's get some local reaction. We have Frank Napolitano on the line, mortgagebrokersottawa.com. Good morning.
Good morning.
Your reaction to the news from the Bank of Canada, Frank. 75 more basis points, and in the statement clearly saying we're not done.
Yeah, that's the scary part. I mean, we expected the 0.75 point increase. What we didn't expect is that commentary right there that maybe we're not done. Now, many economists think that the future increases will be of back to normal. The jumbo ones are out of the picture, we think, and we'll be back to the 0.25% increases. But, the next one's on October 26th. They'll have 2 months of data to work with when it comes to what the inflation numbers come down to. I mean, we're seeing at the gas pumps that the price is much more reasonable these days. So with a little luck, that number will get below the 5% mark and maybe limit the increases moving forward to 0.25 percentage point.
Okay. So this is its fifth consecutive increase so far this year, puts the overnight rate at 3.25%. What's it doing to business?
Slowing it down, obviously. I mean, first-time home buyers have pretty well decided to sit on the sidelines for now. Now, prices of homes have come down slightly. Obviously, the increase year over year based on the report that came out yesterday is 5%, which is still healthy and normal in Ottawa. But, what's that number going to be 4 or 5 months from now when, really – right up until February or March, we had the craziness, and then in April, when the first Bank of Canada prime rate increase happened, that's when everything pretty well came to a standstill. So, I'm afraid we're in for a couple of months of some hard numbers when it comes to real estate sales. We're going to see those numbers decrease dramatically because we've gone from one spectrum, which is absolute craziness in the real estate market, people paying more than they should have for their homes, and interest rates at all-time lows, to the opposite spectrum, which is interest rates higher than they've been in decades, and the real estate market, unfortunately, at a standstill right now.
Standstill. Okay. It seems to me certainly the sales have, they've dropped. No doubt about that. The report from the Ottawa Real Estate Board says that down 27%, and August is usually a slow time anyway. But the prices are hanging in there. I guess if you're patient, you're still going to get your price, right? So
you are, more or less. Like I said, I mean, I think the difference is that 6 months ago, if you listed it for $699, you were getting $800.
Right.
Today, if you're listing it for $699, you're getting $685, $690 maybe.
Okay.
Now, it's all related to a certain neighborhood you're in. Some neighborhoods are still sellers markets. Other neighborhoods have really come to balance. And then there's some neighborhoods that are now buyers markets. So, we're seeing the full spectrum. At least my clients are saying that they're willing to sit tight. My first-time home buyers have said, Frank, the interest rates are too high. Even if we took a variable, so, the thing that's happened today with the 0.75% increase, in some cases, the variable rate could be higher than the 5-year fixed rate, which is very odd. And, if you're buying a first-time home buyer that might be buying with less than 20% down, they're still getting a very good discount, as good as prime minus 1%. But today, the prime rate is at 5.45%, so prime minus 1 is 4.45%, which is still a very high rate in comparison to where we were just a short 6 months ago.
Yeah. So you think inevitably this monetary policy from the Bank of Canada, this tightening, is going to have an impact on prices? Like 707 was the average sale price for everything except condos, which I know encompasses a lot of different types of properties. But nevertheless, you think you think that number's going down, right?
Well, I think that number's going down. The bank economists have all come out over the last 2 weeks, and some of them predicted, house values coming down as much as 20 to 25%. Now, they didn't specify cities. Personally, I feel like Ottawa's in its own little bubble. I don't think that Ottawa would see the significant decreases that they're talking about. I think most of those decreases will happen in the GTA and GVA, but Ottawa might see, it's not uncommon to see Ottawa maybe have a 5 or 6% decrease in values potentially.
Okay. On your website this morning, mortgagebrokersottawa.com, our rates, 5-year fixed, 5.29. Where do you see that headed?
Well, bond markets. So the bond markets have been going up over the last 2 or 3 weeks in anticipation of Bank of Canada increasing by 0.75 of a point. The announcement happened this morning. Today, the bond market has remained flat, which is a good sign. Again, the next Bank of Canada meeting is not until October 26th, so we have a good 6 weeks until the next Bank of Canada announcement. Personally, I think that as more talk of recession starts to happen, this is where the bond market actually starts to retreat. So if I had to guess, I would say that in, over the next 3 months, I think the 5-year fixed rates will likely come down slightly and not go up.
Okay. All right. Frank Napolitano, always great to have you on our show. Get some immediate local reaction to this news.
Always a pleasure, and please continue to support local businesses and charities, everyone.
Yep, from mortgagebrokersottawa.com, Frank Napolitano. Sam LaPrade, up next with the Sam LaPrade Show. I'm back tomorrow at 9 o'clock. Rob Snow Show, City News.
The Rob Snow Show.
Weekdays 9 to noon on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.